Yes, friends, welcome to ACA CA Study Circle of EIRC. We are having a very important topic today on GST because the inverted duty and the duty drawback and how to get the refunds and all is an important aspect which are making many people think day in, day out. And today, with the help of Shubham Khatan, we are able to put forth this program and let's have a in-depth detailed understanding by Yash in the first half. And friends, ACA Chartered Accountant Study Circle is one of the study circle of East India working since 2002 and having 900 chartered accountant in its banner. We have been regularly organizing various CP programs, and tomorrow again with EIRC, we also have a 6 CP program on audit, where we have speakers like PR Ramesh, the chairman of Accounting Standard Board, Mr. MP Vijay Kumar, the ex-chairman of Deloitte India, and other alumni of profession, including session on tax audit, discussing in the panel discussion what is the future of audit, and then understanding what to sign, what not to sign from Mr. P.R. Ramesh in our first audit session, as well as a very futuristic and very realistic program on forensic accounting by none other than Durgesh Pandey, who has been awarded recently a certificate from CBI for helping for last 1 decade on forensic audit, who is from Ahmedabad. So without further delay, I would request Shubham just to play the ICI motto first. Shubham.
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्द्वैता 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 एतद्द्वैता.
Thanks a lot, Shubham. Now, without further delay, over to Shubham to introduce Yash ji, who has come to ACA first time as a speaker, and then to start the session.
Thank you, Vivek Bhaiya, for giving this welcome, and thank you so much, Yash ji, who's been from Jaipur, taking out his time for joining us. So I'll just briefly give his formal introduction. Yash ji is a fellow member of ICI. He is associated with Messrs. Yash Dadda and Company as partner of indirect taxes. He's having working experience of more than 11 years in the field of indirect taxes, with concentration only on GST, service tax, and excise matters. He's currently engaged in litigation matters and advising clients, structuring transactions, conducting due diligence. He's a special invitee to the Indirect Taxes Committee for 21-22 and also part of earlier committee of 18-19 and 19-20. He's also on the panel of CII Rajasthan as GST, service tax, and excise advisors for industry members. He has represented ICI in Regional Advisory Committee, Rajasthan, under the aegis of Chief Commissioner of CBEC, Jaipur. He is founder member of core study group of ICI on GST research and upgradation matters. He has deep interest in academic discussions, upgradations, and training. He has written the book on handbooks on principles of classification of goods and services, and also in casual taxable person for Indirect Taxes Committee of ICI. He's also contributed as core member, which has drafted the technical guide on GST audit. He has delivered lecture in northwestern and eastern parts of India and also a regular attendee of various study courses on GST conducted by Bombay Chartered Accountants, CTC, ICAI, and other forum members as group leader and coordinator. He's also an empaneled member for GST for NASIN, ICAI, and Regional Training Institute for Revenue and CAG officers, and Rajasthan's SGST officers. As his passion, he's also engaged in grooming young professionals of CA, CS, and MBA on topics of soft skills and professional life management. Yash is a commerce graduate from Commerce College, Rajasthan University, and certificate holder of IDD from ICAI. And before I move forward, from my side, I can tell you that we are all very lucky to have him because he's one of the most wonderful speakers throughout India. He has a very unique take on concepts. We would find that there are certain things we might not have heard, even though refunds is something which we might have heard a few times, but we'll have, I'm sure, certain aspects which we might not have ever heard because Yash has dealt with so many practical issues and the way he interprets law is very unique, very different. And I'm sure everyone would have a gala time listening to him for the next 1.5 hours. So I'm sure everyone would be thoroughly benefit. He's a very dear friend of mine. So please welcome him with a big round of applause that he has come to join us. And his topic I would just introduce, which is refunds on GST. Refunds is a very big area of practice as of now under GST because we have multiple kinds of refunds, be it refunds on export of services or export of goods, services or supplies to SEZ, deemed export. If I'm making supplies under, let's say, if I'm making any supplies under inverted duty structure, which we'll have in the second half also. And also in number of other cases where I've made excess payment of taxes. So there's a huge area of practice, a huge area of scope for people who want to get into this practice. And usually we say that maybe CAs are not always, let's say, bringing benefit to the company. They are a cost to the company in a number of ways, but GST refund is one area where CAs can directly provide benefits to the company and the company directly realizes that. So it's a huge area. So I'm sure if you listen to him, there'll be some value additions, or I would say huge value additions, and those would definitely help you in your practice when it comes to practical aspects of your GST refund. So with this, I would like to hand over the session to Yash. Please start your session, sir.
Thank you so much, Shubham. Thank you for
In the
that.
meantime, Yash is setting up his laptop. Just recognize the presence of senior member Arun Agrawal ji from GST.
Okay. Yeah, I recognize the presence of Arun sir also, who has taken his time out for joining us and who has blessed us with his presence. In fact, if we can have a couple of words from him also, that would be wonderful. I mean, thank you so much for joining, sir. Please, if you can speak a few words about the topic, or Yash, if you want, sir, please.
Arun bhaiya,
please.
wait for me. Arun bhai, you are there? Maybe he's missing something. You can continue with Yash. I think he's having some issue.
No problem, sir. No problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so good evening to all the participants and members of ACA study group from EIRC, respected Vivek Agarwal ji and dear Shubham. I will not be able to call him Shubham ji because I have always known him as a friend. But first of all, thank you so much to both of you for giving this wonderful introduction and also for inviting me to this esteemed ACA study group. As I was speaking, we were discussing informally. I have attended few programs, obviously because of this COVID through virtual mode. And whatever I have attended, I have always found the programs very useful, very informative. And I like the concept where you say that somebody is going to be introducer and somebody is going to be group moderator. So that way you keep the sessions interactive. And congratulations for that. And I'm happy that I'm part of this. Shubham has said a lot of heavy words for me, and I'm deeply honored. But whatever things he has spoken about me, majority of those tasks we have done together, at least at the indirect tax committee, be it writing the technical guide or being part of as a special invited to the indirect tax committee. He was there with me. So whatever I have done, he has done much more than that. So with this, we would go to our topic. The topic which I have in my hand is overview of refunds under GST. Though it looks like that there are a lot of things to cover in this. Shubham has rightly said that the topic is quite huge and vast. What I have thought of is that I have picked up certain specific issues. Probably all of us face generally who are into refund compliances, who are facing the department while they're filing the refunds for their clients, or who are handling the litigation in this regard. And then some of the issues probably which we may give value add to the client, which again Shubham has rightly said, under GST this is one area where you can prove your presence to the client directly, when you can bring back the money from the government to the client and ensure that his working capital is maintained. However, whenever I start, I always say that what you see loading in my presentation is not a problem of my presentation, but that's how the GST law has been in India ever since it has been implemented. The law has not settled yet. It is still developing. And because it is still developing, that is why we see some of those issues for which we know that there is a logical answer possible. We know that there is something from the law which we can see. However, because it is the backbone of this whole law is GST portal, and majority of the issues actually are through that portal, and till the time that portal is not completely mature or settled, we would face some certain issues, and specifically for all those who are into compliance practice or who have to actually face in the portal. However, it is not the case that only portal has some issues and that's why this law is not developed. This law in itself is very challenging and very interesting. And before I jump on to the specific issues, this one paragraph which I would like to read from the speech of Sri Goda Raghuraman, who was basically the then CSTAT president. And while inaugurating the Hyderabad branch of CSTAT, he was commenting about the constitutional amendment bill, through which basically the amendments were made for bringing in GST into India. And his observations, probably at that point of time, some would have said that they or somebody would not have been able to contextually understand them. But when you look at the current law and when you read what he said, probably all of us would be able to actually align our thoughts to this. And I would just read word by word what he said. He said, when I saw the GST bill, it is mind-boggling constitutional complexity. It is neither the exclusive list nor the concurrent list. It's a fourth-dimensional animal. It's post-Einstein physics. Henceforth, uncertainty of quantum mechanics is elementary compared to the complexity of this. Even the political complexity of states and union coming together on the continual basis to ratchet the policy of GST is a huge challenge. It is an economical challenge. It is a political challenge, policy challenge, and administrative challenge. It is an adjudication challenge. So that is the next animal waiting to pounce on you, but we have to fight, we have to survive. And I think all of us at least would understand that whatever he has said, majority of those things we can see day in, day out. We can see the issues of adjudication, we can see cross-jurisdiction issues, we can see that assessments or maybe the audits which are happening or the manner in which the refunds have been processed. We see that there is some gap in the way we understand the law, the way officers understand the law, and the way the law is basically being administered on the GST portal. With this, when you go back to the topic which we have in hand, that is the refund, before we go into specific issues, it is quite important to understand what is the basics of a refund. And I'm sure all of us know it, but when you look it from an aspect of any judgment from a Supreme Court, or when you look it from the aspect of how refund has been defined under the law, we would be able to bring out certain things which are important for us to understand. Like, first question which comes up is that whether refund is a fundamental right or a constitutional right, or it is a statutory right. Whether it is can I say that even if there is no provision given under the CGST or SGST Act or IGST Act, but still Constitution gives me the power to actually claim a refund in specific or certain instances. And because of that, I have a constitutional power, or maybe as a fundamental right. That is why even if there is a procedural lacuna or there are some things which law requires me to do in a certain manner. Even if I don't do that, still I'm eligible to claim a refund. And probably answer to this question was given way back in 1997 in case of Mafatlal Industries case by the Honorable Supreme Court, where they reached to a point where they said that whenever somebody is filing a refund on account of various issues, it can be subdivided into various categories. And one of that is wherever there is any recovery of tax. So first thing to understand, all of us know that Article 265 of the Constitution of India basically says that no tax shall be collected without the authority of law. Now, the Honorable Supreme Court in case of Mafatlal Industries, while basically giving a detailed judgment in respect of what are the types of refund, when somebody would be able to say that they are covered by the limitation, they are covered by the procedures, or what is the manner which they have to follow. The Supreme Court said that whenever there is any levy which is treated as unconstitutional, unconstitutional means something which any law or any statute envisages to collect as tax, which is beyond the authority which has been given by the Constitution under 265, then in that case, we need not actually look at the provisions of the law to find out whether the one would be able to claim a refund of said amount which has been paid in the name of tax, for which now it has been held that levy was unconstitutional. So in those cases, wherever any law is declared as unconstitutional by the court, only in those cases, one may not have to actually look at the provisions of the law, the timelines given, the forms given. But in these cases, one has to also appreciate that these refunds can only be granted in a writ court. And these refunds, one may not actually be required to file an application before the concerned jurisdictional officer. However, when you look at the other categories, when somebody files a refund, like for example, when a levy is treated as illegal, where the levy may be within the provisions of or the authority given under 265, but the legal interpretation of that specific levy brings out that it should not have been levied. For example, in case of ocean freight, where all of us are grappling with the issue whether tax to be paid under reverse charge mechanism when somebody is making a payment, importing goods on CIF or FOB basis, then in that case, whether under reverse charge, the tax is to be paid on the deemed value or not. Let's say tomorrow Supreme Court says that the levy of tax on this ocean freight is illegal, then in that case, it would still be within the provisions of the Article 265. But that because of the interpretation, it would go out the scope of supply or maybe double taxation, whatever the reason it may come out with. Then in that case, still the provisions for refund, one may have to look at the statutory provisions. What are the statutory provisions given and what are the timelines? The other cases when somebody makes a mistake where I might have, due to my bona fide belief or wrong interpretation of the provisions or misreading of the law, I might have paid the tax and now I'm claiming a refund, or where there is a genuine clerical error and by mistake I have paid an excess amount of tax, or maybe there is some right which is flowing from the law. Like for example, in case of inverted duty structure, like for example, in case of unutilized input tax credit, which we have arising due to the zero rated supplies which I'm making. In all these cases, one has to actually look at the conditions which are given in the law, the safeguards which law requires to be followed, the procedure and the manner in which the refund can be claimed. And from this, basically, we get an understanding that whatever amount of tax which we have paid, and if in case we're looking for a repayment of that tax, one may not say that every refund which one is filing may be, that may be a fundamental right for that particular person. Only in those cases where a levy has been treated as unconstitutional, one may say that he gets a constitutional safeguard to claim a refund of that amount paid in the name of tax. But in all other cases, one has to actually look at the provisions of the Act. If you try and find out whether there is the word refund defined under the Act, then for that we have an explanation given to section 54 after subsection 14, where they have said refund includes, and it's an inclusive meaning which has been given, which says refund includes refund of tax paid on zero rated supplies of goods or services of both, or on inputs or input services used in making zero rated supplies, or refund of tax on supply of goods regarded as deemed export, or refund of unutilized input tax credit as provided under subsection 3. And there probably one may not be able to actually comprehend by saying that all the cases of refunds are covered in this. But maybe one may can say that this definition or the meaning of refund which has been given under the explanation, it has been given only for the precautionary purposes, but there can be innumerable other instances which may not be covered in this explanation, still that may have character of a refund. And for that, one has to look at the provision of section 54 of the CGST Act and obviously the parallel provisions of SGST Act when one is looking for claiming a refund. And this brings us to the provisions which probably we should look at. I would not go by provision, but I thought that 54 subsection 1 is quite important, and it brings out 2-3 things for us to understand and deliberate upon. And when you look at 54.1, it says any person claiming refund of any tax and interest, if any, paid on such tax or any other amount paid by him, may make an application before the expiry of 2 years from the relevant date in such form and manner as may be prescribed. And in fact, in these 3 lines only, there are 2-3 things which comes out very quite clearly from the law. However, when you look at the implementation of it, you realize that there is a gap. Like, for example, 54.1 specifically says that any person claiming refund of any tax paid. Now, any person, that person may be a registered person, may be an unregistered person. 54.1 enables, in fact, an unregistered person to also claim a refund when he can demonstrate that he has paid any tax. So, like, for example, in a case where somebody has charged an excess tax which is beyond the statutory rates which are given under notification number 1 or notification number 11, and I understand that that burden of tax has been borne by me, then if I really want to claim a refund of it, there is a possibility that I might look at 54.1 and realize that statutorily I have been empowered by the law to actually claim a refund, subject to the form and manner which has been given under the 54.1, for which I might have to read the rules. However, when you reach to the rules, when you try and look at this on the GST portal, one realizes that till the time you are not registered with the GST portal, you would not be able to claim a refund. And there is the first gap which comes up. Who are all those people who generally face problem because of this? Generally are all those people who are buying flats from the builders, where in those cases where builder might have charged an amount of tax from the customer, and tomorrow let's say that customer says, I don't want to pursue with that specific deal, I want to cancel my booking and I don't want to buy this flat from you. And then when he would ask for a refund, and let's say the builder gives a refund, the problem is builder would say, I would not pay the amount of tax to you because I've already paid that to the government. Though the supply might not have happened, if you want to claim the refund, you go and claim it from the government. However, because he does not have a procedure, there he sees a problem. So that's the first gap which is there. But as a professional, all of us should understand, because there is a statutory provision available, and because there is no form and manner prescribed in this specific regard, one may actually go and file a manual refund application before the officer. In case he does not entertain it, where there is a highly likely possibility that he will not entertain, then in that case, that matter can be taken up to the court if in case the amounts involved are substantial. Second thing to understand is 54.1 does not only talk about refund of tax, but it also talks about the refund of interest and any other amount paid. So if I have paid any interest wrongly, obviously if I paid any tax wrongly, if I paid any interest for which I'm entitled to claim a refund, or any other amount may include a late fees also. So specifically in those cases where the portal should not have charged late fees from me, in those cases where I was not responsible for the delayed filing of the returns, or because of the portal issues that my return was not filed, but now because it is a mandatory requirement to pay a late fees, in all those cases, one may actually look at 54.1, file a refund claim, again, as per the manner given in the rules, where we would find a residuary category, and prove the case to the concerned officer by saying that I have paid a late fees, I was not required to pay that, I should not have been charged that specific late fees. And if I can demonstrate that whatever late fees was charged from me was not due to any lacuna on my part, then one has a good case to actually claim a refund in that particular regard. Third, and a very interesting thing which comes is, it says that you have to file a refund before the expiry of 2 years from the relevant date. We will discuss the provision of relevant date at length, but it says it has to be done in the form and manner as may be prescribed. When you go to section 2 of the CGST Act, it says prescription means prescribed through rules. Now, when you look at what is the meaning of form and manner, for that we have Supreme Court judgment, which I have referred to in respect of sales tax. In fact, you would find other Supreme Court judgments also, or in fact high courts also, where they have interpreted what is the extent of meaning one can give to this form and manner. And the consensus which comes out that form and manner only determines the mode in which certain things can be done. Through this, or by reading this, one can always argue by saying that whether through form and manner anything can be delegated to the rule making authorities, which is substantive in nature, which does not only prescribe the manner of doing this, but may also restrict certain rights, or it may or quantum which otherwise is available to me from the provisions of the act. And again, that also becomes one of the very interesting arguments when somebody would say that if law allows me to take a refund of specific things, whether rules can restrict the same. Though I would not infringe on the topic of the other co-speaker on inverted duty structure, but that also is one of the arguments which one may look at when they realize that whether the rule-making authority can go beyond the provisions, specifically when 54(1) says that you may claim a refund of tax which you have paid, and the manner and form of it may only be prescribed. So whether rules can specifically in this regard can go beyond. Now, with this, we come to the very interesting aspect of relevant date. I'm sure all of us who are into practice of filing the refunds understand that 2 years from the relevant date is quite important concept for various types of refund which we file. Like, for example, in case of zero rated supplies, when somebody is making either for supply of goods or for supply of services, it depends what type of refund basically that person is claiming. If it is for the unutilized input tax credit, or it is in respect of any IGST which has been charged on that zero rated supply, then the time limit which has been given under the law in that regard is 2 years from that relevant date, and relevant date has been given in the explanation to section 54 for various instances. Like, for example, whenever there is an export of goods by sea or air, it says that you have to calculate the relevant date when the ship is loaded or the aircraft leaves India. We call it generally that LEO date. LEO date is that particular date when it is leaving India. Then we have the export of goods by land, export of by post. I would not go into details of specifics of each and everything, but the purpose of saying this is that these relevant dates or this concept is very important. Now, two things here which are very interesting. Again, you would look at inverted duty structure and you see that there was an amendment in respect of relevant date where up till 31st of January 2019, they talked about end of the financial year in which the claim arises. That becomes the relevant date. And within 2 years from this specific date, they said that from the end of the financial year, you have to claim the refund. Whereas it was amended with effect from 1st of February 2019, and that relevant date was substantially reduced from end of the financial year to the due date of furnishing of GSTR 3B for the period for which the refund arises. Now, again, one issue which generally crops up is whenever there is an amendment like this, whether it will have a retrospective effect or a prospective effect. If I'm filing refund claims for the previous year, what impact it is going to have. And for that, again, we have a Supreme Court judgment in respect of Vatika Township, which clearly says that whenever there is any notification which comes in, that until the time the date is not specifically mentioned, it is going to have a retrospective effect. One has to always look at it. It is going to be prospective in nature, and any restriction which is coming in may not take away the right which is already accrued to me. So one has to look at where departments are now raising the questions in respect of all the refunds which were filed for the period prior to 31/1/2019, but filed after 31/1/2019, whether what is going to be the relevant date. And I'm sure this judgment is going to help all of those people. Now, friends, very interesting in case of relevant date, which all of us should know is, if let's say I have paid any tax under reverse charge mechanism, where I am the recipient but not the supplier, and now I have realized it's an excess payment of tax which has happened from my side, and I want to claim a refund of it. Now, in that case, the irrelevant date which has been given there, it says refund by a person other than a supplier. If somebody who is not a supplier but a recipient, and or it may be a third person, but probably for today we would not go into that specific discussion. So somebody who is not a supplier but a recipient, he has paid the tax, he wants to claim the refund. Then in that case, the payment of tax, date of payment of tax is not the relevant date. The relevant date is the date of receipt of goods and services. And one would appreciate that when you would look, you connect this with provision of section 31(3)(f), which we have for preparing a self-invoice when somebody is paying a tax and a reverse charge mechanism. That also links the time limit for preparing a self-invoice on the basis of when you're receiving the goods and services. And hence, one has to keep this exception in mind that whenever somebody is claiming a refund of excess payment of tax in respect of reverse charge, then the payment of tax or filing of return is not the relevant date, but you have to prove or substantiate when was that particular date when you actually received the goods or services. And obviously, the residuary category is that category when you're not falling into specific, it says date of payment of tax. Now remember, friends, very interesting thing which has happened in this. 54(1) says that you may claim a refund within expiry of 2 years from the relevant date. We have a concept of relevant date which we have just discussed. However, when you go and file a refund, specifically in case when it is for an unutilized input tax credit arising out of zero rate supplies or inverted, or in fact otherwise also, it talks about relevant period. In fact, on the GST portal, all of us are aware that whenever I'm filing a refund, let's say in any other category or excess payment of tax category, it will ask me a period. Now that period may be a tax period, it may not be a tax period. And in fact, in one of the circulars issued in 2018, circular number 37, it was explained that when you're talking in context of refund, there is a difference between a tax period and there is a difference between a relevant period. Tax period, as all of us know, has been defined under section 2, where it says the period for which you're filing or furnishing a return is called as a tax period. Whereas if you look at 89 subrule 4 or 89 subrule 5, it says relevant period is actually the period for which you're filing the refund claim. Now take an example, in fact, which has been given in the circular 37 also, where they say that when you're filing a refund claim, there may be of unutilized input tax credit on account of zero rated supplies. There can be possibility where you have input tax credit which you have claimed in a specific return relates to a specific tax period. Let's say that tax period is April 2020. And your exports might have happened in the month of November 2020. So you have an ITC in the month of April 2020. You have exports in the month of November 2020. Now, whether can you claim refund of that particular input tax credit which you have claimed in the month of April 2020 against the export which you have done in the month of November 2020? And the answer to that was given in circular number 37, where they said that there can be a possibility where your ITC is there in a different tax period and your export can be in a different tax period. But when you're filing a refund claim, if you have one relevant period, if you bring both those tax periods into one relevant period, then you may claim a refund of it. And that is why your export would not become costly. Okay. Now, friends, with this, you come to circular 125. All of these are linked. So you have relevant date concept given in 54, which says 2 years from the relevant date. When you go to the rules, they talk about the relevant period. They say relevant period is different from the tax period. They say two different tax periods, but one specific issue, you may bunch it. In fact, circular number 125 also said this, that in case you want to file a refund claim of different tax periods together, you may bunch it, there is no problem. However, circular had one problem. It says the spillover cannot be in two different financial years. Like, for example, your ITC claim is in March 2020 and your export is in the month of November 2020. Then as per circular 125, that was not possible, 2 financial years. Basically, circulars might have taken the instruction from the GSTIN, whether GSTIN can do this. Probably GSTIN engineers would have said, no, it's not possible, and that's why the circular came. However, this appellant Pitambar Books went to the Delhi High Court and they said whatever has been written in the circular, it is not coming from the provisions of the law. High Court said it is absolutely correct. The appeal which has been raised by the appellant, where they said the circular can only supplement the law, they cannot supplant the law, and clearly this circular 125 was going beyond the provisions of the law. And they said even if somebody wants to file a refund claim which spills over 2 different financial years, the tax periods of it, one will bring that in one particular relevant period. So now, in fact, if you have an ITC claim, let's say in the month of February 2020, you have exports in the month of February 2021 under LUT, let's say, and you're looking for filing a refund claim, there is a possibility that you have one relevant period starting from February 2020 up till February 2021, and you're filing a refund claim there, obviously subject to how are your other figures in your books of account. Now with this, we have one more interesting judgment, though in the earlier regime of service tax, not in the regime of GST, but quite important and is an implication here. So somebody might raise a question, what happens if my export is on 1st of the month? My goods or the ship in which the goods were loaded, actually they have left India on the 1st of that particular month. And when I'm filing the refund claim after 2 years or within the period of 2 years, I'm filing that on the 30th. So let's say my export has happened on 1st of September 2019. And now I want to file a refund claim of, again, unutilized input tax credit. Can I file the refund claim for the month of, by 30th of September 2021? So if you look at it from the provision of the Act, you will realize that I'm crossing that period of 2 years from that relevant date. That relevant date was the date on which the export has happened. But when you look at the portal and the rules, you realize that refund has to be for a relevant period, and I may do so. And on this specific issue where the provision says something, but rule or the manner in which a refund can be filed, it is for a specific period. We have a larger bench judgment in respect of Spain Infotech India Private Limited, where they said that if the mechanism has been built such that application can be filed for a period, but it cannot be filed for a specific date in a month, then you have to take that last date of that particular period of filing the refund application. And in that case, what the example which I just gave, one may take a reference of Span Infotech, and if in a specific month there is a possibility that some of my export which have happened at a date where if I calculate on a relevant date basis, I will go beyond 2 years, still because the mechanism is such that I can file refund application for a period, I will still be within the limitation, and my refund is not going to be the time barred in that specific regard. So the process basically which I wanted to explain is, your laws talks about 2 years from relevant date, your rules talk about filing a refund for a relevant period, and hence the expiry of time limit, when you read it along with the law and the Span Infotech, you have to actually calculate on the basis of the relevant period, but not only the relevant date. And then if you have an ITC which is coming from the previous months and your exports happening in a specific period, one may actually consider that while claiming the specific refund. Then we come to another interesting issue, one which practically faces is the deficiency memo. And deficiency memo, though now it has more or less been regularized, but still we see in a lot of cases specifically, and I would not shy away from saying this, at least in case of when the matter is with the state tax authorities, generally they use this deficiency memo as a tool till the time they're not sure whether they want to process the refund or not. At least that has been my personal experience. Where it has happened is that they would issue one deficiency memo, then you would give certain documents to them, then they would say, no, this is not proper, and then again they would issue a deficiency memo. Though rules clearly debars them from doing so, but still they would do so. Now, the problem in case of what happens in case of a deficiency memo is that when I am filing a refund application and the officer says the documents are not proper, then he will not issue acknowledgement to me in RFD 02 as per Rule 90. So I have filed my RFD 01. He says, no, I don't want to issue an acknowledgement to you, but rather I will tell you what is the deficiency, and he will give me RFD 03. Now, the rule specifically says that whenever an RFD 03 is given, that's a deficiency memo, the applicant who would actually rectify those deficiency or cure those deficiency and would file the documents again, it will be treated as if it's a fresh application. Now, once you say it becomes a fresh application, one of the interpretation which comes in is that means that 2-year time limit, which I was talking as a relevant date, or the limitation in which I have to file a refund claim, that period is specifically lost. At least that period during which I have filed a refund claim and deficiency memo was issued. Though we have already have an amendment in the rules in the month of May 2021, where they have said at least for the purpose of calculating your time limit, your filing of refund claim and issuance of a deficiency memo, that particular time limit basically would be excluded from the calculation. But friends, probably there is something which we have to look beyond this. And what is that? Can there be an interpretation like this where my provision of the law says that I have to file a refund application in the form and manner as may be prescribed. I filed that in specific form and manner to the best of my understanding in RFD 01 within the time limit. Now, if tomorrow an officer says that I am going to issue a deficiency memo, and once he does so and I'm curing the deficiency, it will be treated as a fresh refund application. Now, first of all, to understand why do they treat it as a fresh refund application? Is it so that rule specifically wanted to bring this, that all those who are filing a refund claim which is not proper, they wanted to actually exclude or reduce the time limit for them, or to ensure that the refund is not given? Whether the rule 90 has been formed with that particular intention. However, my interpretation or how I would look at it is that once an acknowledgement in RFD 02 is issued, that timer starts for the departmental officer, but not for us. Because once you have an RFD 02, then in a time-bound manner, he has to actually dispose that particular refund. Either he has to grant the refund or he has to issue a show cause notice, take the reply on natural justice basis, and then dispose by issuing an order in RFD 5 or RFD 06, whatever is the case. So now, if let's say he issued a deficiency memo and I do not comply with it within the given time limit, if this provision rule 90 would not have been there, it would have become very challenging for the officer. If let's say he has given me 15 days and last on the 15th day, I gave him information, then he is practically left with no time to actually process the refund application, and it would have been actually injustice to the officer. To ensure that officer gets an additional 15 days time once the deficiency memo is issued and we are filing a fresh refund application technically, only to that extent one may have to look at this rule 90. And in my understanding, we would have substantial legal backing in this regard, that once I file a refund claim, even if a deficiency memo is issued to me and subsequently I'm rectifying it in the manner which says that you have to file a fresh refund application, in all those cases, there would not be any problem. And still my time limit should go back to the original date. Of course, this Jian International judgment, which you see on your screen by the Delhi High Court in the GST regime, it was basically to curb all those cases where the officer was issuing deficiency memo again and again on a specific refund application, where the rule clearly says once a deficiency memo has been issued, the officer cannot actually issue the deficiency memo again. And the High Court said if the officer is doing so, then basically he is bypassing the provisions of the law. And once one deficiency memo has been issued, any subsequent deficiency memo issued in that regard is incorrect or not proper. However, I am on that particular point of time limit computation. And in this regard, again, we have judgments from the service tax and excise regime where they said once somebody has filed a refund application and the officer says that it has some lacuna, some deficiency, it needs to be cured. And when he resubmits that specific application, then in that case, the limitation should actually be counted from the first date on which the application was filed, but not from the date on which when he's filing refiling that specific application. So we have enough ammunition in this regard to in fact defend all those cases where refunds have been filed on the last dates and then a deficiency has been issued, and now we are receiving a show cause notice from the department by saying that a refund was time barred in that particular regard. Then we come to some very interesting procedural aspects, and in fact these are not only procedural aspects, but in some cases they try to actually take away your substantive right. And one may look at it how basically has to manage or look at the manner in which the provision should be looked at or rule should be read. Now, when you come to zero rated supplies, all of us know that as of now, we have two options. Till the time proviso to section 16 is not notified of the IGST Act, at least all of us who are supplying goods or supplying services as zero rated supplies, we can either do it under LUT or on payment of IGST. However, when you're doing it on payment of IGST, specifically in case of goods, one has to ensure that if he wants to claim refund of that particular IGST, which he has charged on his tax invoice, then in that case, three basic broad principles he has to ensure that he should not do. One is that he should not claim refund benefit of IGST on the imports, that is in respect of advanced license, or maybe in case of EOU unit, or maybe buying it from a deemed exporter or merchant exporter. Second, he should bring in the foreign currency. So these are basically three things in case of IGST. One has to ensure what you see on the blue on your screen, left hand side, are restrictions on the inward side. If you are basically claiming benefits of these type on an inward side, then you're barred under Rule 9610 to actually charge IGST on your export, or in fact, you're not barred from charging IGST on your export, but you're barred from actually claiming refund of the IGST which you have charged on your export. And obviously, you have to bring back the foreign currency. That's what the rule says. When you come to right hand side, where somebody is making an export on red duty, again, he also has been now given that condition that he has to bring in the foreign currency, be it an exporter of goods or exporter of services. All of us always knew that in case of export of services, service will be treated as an export only when somebody brings in the foreign currency. However, through rules, at least for export of goods now, both exported under LUT or IGST, this condition has been brought in. Obviously, that is subject to judicial review, but that's again not our point of concern as of now. Two additional conditions which are there again through circulars. One is through a circular, and second is through an amendment in the rule, where they say if you are claiming a refund of the unutilized input tax credit, that unutilized input tax credit should be visible in your GSTR 2A. So basically, all those who are claiming refund, they in fact have to follow a stricter formula of 36(4), where they do not have that benefit of 105%, but whatever ITC is there in the books of account, they have satisfied conditions of section 16 of the CGST Act, and then it is also appearing in GSTR 2A, then only they would be entitled to claim a refund of that particular ITC. And then obviously there has been amendment in the formula under 89 sub rule 4, where they say that the value of export, it has also been basically regulated, where they say it cannot go beyond 1.5 times of the domestically like or similar placed products which are being sold by you or by any other person similar to you. And again, in itself, that becomes very confusing. Now, so the purpose of basically bringing this slide is to understand that when you're exporting goods, one has to ensure not only to follow the procedure filing the refund application, but what you are doing at the time of purchases, what you are doing at the time of filing refund, and what you are doing at the time of basically dealing with the customer. All of that also becomes very important when somebody is filing a refund in the specific categories. Now we come to the specific issues of change in definition of export turnover. I'm sure this issue has troubled all of us a lot, at least in my personal case also. A lot of the cases where the CGST officers, they have tried to be a little extra or try to find out something extra from this rule 89(4)(c), where what they have said is basically what this rule says is that you have a formula which is well known to all of us. It says turnover of zero rate supplies of goods divided by adjusted total turnover into net ITC when somebody is claiming a refund of unutilized input tax credit. Now, the problem in this regard, basically what the rule says is, or the amendment is, it says the turnover of zero rate supply of goods, don't look at what is the meaning of aggregate turnover, transaction value, and all those things. You may consider that, but there is an upper cap to it. And the upper cap to it is basically 1.5 times of the like goods supplies in India or domestic tariff area by the same or similarly placed supplier. Now, all of us, I'm sure, has argued what is the meaning of similar placed supplier, what is the meaning of similar goods, how will I identify that? Is it going to be a transfer pricing mechanism, or somebody has to actually borrow the transfer pricing principles which we use in income tax to understand all of this? And the biggest problem in this amendment was not only the capping, but they did not change the definition of adjusted total turnover. And meaning thereby one has to actually take the total value of the adjusted total turnover. Whereas because of this amendment, there was a possibility that my numerator was getting reduced. So my numerator was reducing, it has an upper cap. My denominator actually included the actual export value plus actual domestic supplies value. And obviously that would have impacted my refund. Now, understanding this problem, Probably it may again go to the High Court. People are going to challenge this kind of an amendment, but at least what government has done is there is some relief which has been given by way of the circular which was brought on till 12th of March 2021, where what they have tried to explain. Now, friends, again, interesting to understand this circular which we see in on our screen. It is a circular beneficial to us. So probably none of us are going to question that how are they basically explaining all of this through a circular. But still, because it's a beneficial circular, I'm sure nobody would say that no, this is incorrect or improper. What this circular says is, if let's say because of that upper cap, your numerator of export value gets changed or it gets reduced, then obviously in your adjusted total turnover, though there has been no change in the definition of the adjusted total turnover, still in that case, you will actually, for the purpose of this formula of the refund, you will take same value which you're taking in the numerator. And in fact, they have given one of the examples as a table in the circular only, where they have said, let's say there is an exporter who's also making a domestic supply. Its local quantity or value of local goods is, let's say, 1,000, where the value per unit is 200. Export, when whatever he's selling the same or similar placed goods at 350 rupees. Now the upper cap says 1.5 times of the domestic value. So if you put 1.5 times of the domestic value, it will come as 300. And that is why now, because the amendment, the numerator, which would have been otherwise 1750, it would become 1500. Now the circular says your numerator would be 1500. Your denominator, which would have been otherwise 2750, because of the circular, now it becomes 2500. Your ITC, whatever ITC was there, remains that ITC, and you will be entitled to claim a refund of rupees 162. Now, if this would not have happened, if this amendment would not have been there, in this specific case, the refund amount would have been 171, but it reduced to 162. If this circular would not have come, the departmental officers were of the understanding that denominator will be 2750 and refund would have been further reduced to approximately 150 or 151. So this circular at least kind of gives a relief. It may not be a proper relief, the manner in which the amendment has come. What at least all of us should be aware of this, in all those cases where officer says your denominator would remain same, the exact actual value which comes. That brings me to another interesting issue which officers are raising, and now I understand it's a pan-India issue which has been raised by the officers in respect of refund of unutilized input tax credit, where what they are trying to say is that when you export goods out of India, you have to prepare a shipping bill, and obviously you have to prepare a tax invoice under Rule 46. Now, at the time of preparation of tax invoice under Rule 46, the export may be on CIF basis, the export may be on FOB basis. All of us know that there are international Incoterms, that is transportation agreement between with the customer, how he wants to take the delivery, who would basically be responsible for making the delivery done, who would be responsible for the taking risk and all those things. It's a purely commercial understanding between the customer and the exporter. Now, what were officers doing is, when somebody basically has an export on CIF basis, what happens in the shipping bill is that shipping bill puts an invoice value, then shipping bill will have an FOB value, and then shipping bill will have two separate line items as insurance and freight. So when somebody would do a total of FOB plus insurance plus freight, it will reach to the invoice value. However, when you look at our GST invoice under Rule 46, because Section 15 of the CGST Act says that whatever tax you are or whatever transaction value has to be, it will be inclusive of all incidental expenses. And that is why our transaction value will always be the value of the goods, to which we call it as FOB value, plus insurance, plus freight, if in case that is any on the invoice. Now, there was this circular 125, which had para number 47. Now, this circular actually came to ease out the anomaly or to ease out the burden which is there between the trade and the department. So the question which was basically the issue which was framed in this para 47 was, and the circular said that it has been brought to their notice that the value declared in the tax invoice is different from the export value declared in the corresponding shipping bill under the Customs Act, and refund claims are not being processed, because the officers were saying your shipping bill has a different value, your invoice has a different value, and the answer needs to be given. Now, one thing which the circular actually has not addressed is that what kind of issue actually came before them. And in all likelihood, the issue which actually went to the board for clarifying was, if let's say I'm exporting goods today and the exchange rate is 72 rupees, and tomorrow when actually goods are being shipped, or when the shipping bill is prepared, at that point of time the exchange rate changes to 73. So my shipping bill will have a rate of 73. My invoice will have a rate of 72. And in that case, how the refund should be processed, or what value should I take? That was a question, or that was the problem which trade had. However, because they did not explain this, what they said in next two paragraphs is quite interesting. They said, value recorded in the GST invoice should normally be the transaction value as determined under section 15 of the CGST Act, read with rules made thereunder. The same transaction value should normally be recorded in the corresponding shipping bill and bill of export. That's what they said. That is going to be the ideal situation. Now see the last three lines. Circular said, during the processing of refund claim, the value of goods declared in the GST invoice and the value of corresponding shipping bill of export should be examined, and the lower of the two values should be taken into account while calculating the eligible amount of refund. And that's what the circular said. You said take lower of the values, and on the basis of it, refund should be processed. Now, how departmental officers have understood this circular, and that brings out that how basically when two people are looking at a specific thing, what are their interpretation. So what officers are now saying is, and in fact, all these cases I have seen at least in 2 or 3 states where they have rejected the refunds, the matter are pending before the Commissioner Appeals, and in one of the states, in fact, Commissioner Appeals also rejected the matter. So what is the issue? Issue is they are saying, see, now on the shipping bill, you have 3 different values: FOB value, insurance, and freight. And your invoice, obviously, you have one transaction value, which you are showing. Obviously, it might have various components. Your invoice, we will take complete value. That is FOB, let's say 100, insurance 5, and let's say freight 5. Total invoice value is 110. However, when we would look at this circular, when you look at the shipping bill, we will not take the value of insurance and freight, because that's not the value as per the shipping bill. The lower value is only 100. So when we are going to give you the refund for your export formula also, your export would remain as 100. It will not be 110. But your total turnover would always be 110, because your invoice says the total value is 110. And somebody who is a 100% exporter, who is only exporting goods, not in fact doing any single domestic supply, because of this misinterpretation, I would say, the numerator would become 100. That's the value of the goods, FOB value of the goods given in the shipping bill. And the denominator would become 110. That's the value which is there on the invoice. And on the basis of it, almost his 10% refund will be wiped off. He will not be given that particular refund. And then he might have to shift to IGST refund. Once he shifts to the IGST refund, in those cases also, at some of the ports, they're saying they are not going to refund of the insurance or the freight amount. Now, friends, this is completely, in my understanding, I can say this completely wrong interpretation. This interpretation has no legal backing. One may in fact should not be in fact tempted to look at where are the provisions which are given in the act, because in fact circular is also very clearly saying you take lower of the transaction value, and transaction value meaning is quite clearly given under section 15. It will always include the freight and insurance amount, and that is why your lower of the value should only be restricted to the extent of exchange rate difference. Otherwise, all these components should form part of the transaction value. Matters are pending. I hope those matters are not there in Kolkata. If in case somebody brings those issues, you may show them this particular judgment of 2009 in respect of Sterlite Industries India Limited, where the Chennai tribunal has specifically held that when and again it is in respect of central excise regime, when somebody is claiming a rebate in central excise, then in those cases, if there is a difference in FOB or CIF value, you cannot restrict the refund only on the basis of FOB value. If the total value is or the export is on the basis of CIF basis, that's part of the transaction value, and the refund has to be given on that particular basis. So that particular judgment, it is going to be helpful here, though slightly different in terms of the understanding how transaction value is written under GST, but still it will have a lot of influential value, and I'm sure we will be able to explain that the circular has been misinterpreted. Then we come to the issue of condition of export realization, and that is again also a kind of an interesting thing which has been come up. This has been brought under the rules. We all of us know that up till Finance Act 2021, in respect of export of goods, there was no such condition that you have to bring in foreign currency to claim the refund, maybe of IGST paid on exports, or maybe when you're claiming a refund of unutilized input tax credit. But through amendment, or maybe through a new rule 96B with effect from 23rd of March 2020, this condition was brought in where it was said, if you are claiming refund of unutilized input tax credit or IGST paid on exports, then you have to ensure that you bring in the foreign currency as per the time limits which are given under FEMA. One may argue whether there is any such authority which comes from the provisions of the Act. How are they bringing all of this? Maybe the answer to that is, if one look at the conservative side of it, that all the refunds are subject to certain safeguards and restrictions, and maybe this is one of the safeguards which has been invoked, and because of which this 96B is there. So even if we do not challenge the validity of it, that why are the rules going beyond the provision of section 16 or not, still this 96B has some areas where all of us as professionals should be able to deliberate to the department quite clearly. That is, the rule says that if I'm not able to bring the foreign currency within the specified time given under FEMA, that is 6 months or 9 months as the case may be, then in that case, whatever refund has been taken by me, maybe of unutilized input tax credit or IGST, that would become recoverable by issuance of a show cause notice under section 73 or 74 as erroneous refund. Now, first thing is that if they are going to recover that particular amount from me as an erroneous refund, for that they have to give me the refund. Meaning thereby, officer at the time of processing the refund cannot tell me that he will not give me refund because I have not received the foreign currency at the time of filing the refund application. The rule does not say that a refund would not be allowed. It says if you have claimed the refund, that amount will be recovered from you. So that one understanding which probably an adjudicating authority will have, that understanding it should be done away with, and they should not restrict, they should not say that we are not going to give you the refund. Now, once the refund has been granted, there can be show cause under 73, 74, but the rule does not address this issue that if, let's say, after issuance of a show cause notice, I receive the foreign currency, whether that refund would still remain an erroneous refund. And there is the challenge. The first part of it, which I said, at the time of filing refund, my refund is not erroneous. I've got the refund, I've not received the foreign currency within the time. Now that refund, according to that specific rule, becomes erroneous. They may issue a show cause notice. Let's say they've issued the show cause notice and I receive the amount in foreign currency from my customer. Whether that refund will become erroneous or not, in my, again, humble understanding, it will not be an erroneous refund. And that is why all the proceeding of 73, 74 should actually automatically drop. But Rule 96B does not talk about this. In fact, it goes ahead and says, the moment you receive the foreign currency, within 3 months, you have to file the application and say, okay, now give me my refund back, which you have taken it. But it does not say that you will be entitled for a interest. But at the time of payment of tax under 73, 74, all of us know that interest is automatic. And whenever there is any recovery of tax which is happening in 73, 74, I would be required to basically pay the interest in that regard. So this 96B has some challenges. It is not very well drafted. The one thing which all of us should be quite sure about is that department cannot invoke the provision 96B prior to 23rd of March 2020. Any export which has happened prior to 23rd March 2020, it cannot be subject to the restrictions of 96B. The judgment of Vatika Township, which I just discussed in the starting, would hold good here, that all these rules which are coming in, they cannot restrict a right which was otherwise accrued to me before this specific date. If at all this 96B is applied for any of the exports or refund for exports which were done prior to 23rd March 2020, all of us have a good case to argue, and all of us have a good case to in fact defend our specific clients. One very interesting observation in this regard, which all of us should know, that how government agencies basically work. So this 96B talks about taking a declaration from the applicant who is filing the refund, and you read the language of this undertaking. This undertaking says, I hereby undertake to deposit to the government the amount of refund sanctioned along with interest in case of non-receipt of foreign exchange remittance
As per the proviso to section 16 of the IGST Act, read with rule 96B of the CGST rules 2017. Now you read, it says proviso to section 16 of the IGST Act. This rule came on 23rd of March 2020. At that point of time, you may look at your respective acts which you have in hand. At that point of time, there was no proviso to section 16. However, through Finance Act 2021, there was a proviso to section 16, which was basically added 16.3. A proviso was added where it says that now if you don't receive the foreign currency, basically your refund will be taken away. That date has still not been notified. It is basically going to be notified. Meaning thereby, when this rule was brought in, the rule-making authority were aware that they do not have the provision. They had thought there in their mind that they would bring it to a proviso to 16. They have mentioned that in the undertaking, and they were asking to basically file the undertaking, and then through Finance Act 2021, that proviso was brought in, and it is still made not applicable as on today. It has not been notified in that regard. So that brings out clearly that contradiction in the manner in which basically the working in this regard has happened. I'll come to quickly, I'll touch this 9610 and then we'll go to other issues by refund, which are also quite interesting. 9610 again is one particular issue for all those who are purely into export of goods, where they have to import goods or they might have to take goods at a duty-free rate. And there this 9610 says, okay, if you want to do so, you would not have the flexibility to file the refund claims through an automatic route of IGST, but you will have to actually subject yourself to the manual filing of the refund of unutilized input tax credit. And basically what 9610 says is that anybody who is claiming benefit of all these 4 notifications at the time of procurement of goods, which you may use for the purpose of your export, maybe as a manufacturer or as a trader, then in that cases, if you have not paid IGST at the time of maybe basically buying goods from an EOU or EOU importing goods, or maybe somebody who's under an advance authorization buying raw materials from outside India without payment of any IGST, or somebody who's claiming a benefit of deemed exports, or somebody basically who is buying goods from a merchant exporter at a 0.1 concessional rate, then in all those cases, they would not be entitled to basically claim refund of IGST if at all they charge IGST on their export. So 9610 does not say don't charge IGST. If 9610 would have said don't charge IGST if you're buying from under all these notifications, probably life would have been easier. Why life would have been easier? Then in all those cases where people have wrongly charged IGST, they would have said under 9610, we were not allowed to charge IGST. Kindly give us the refund of wrongly paid tax, which we were not entitled to basically pay. 9610 says if you take benefit of any of these notifications, don't pay GST at the time of procurement. Then at the time of outward supply, you may pay IGST, we don't have any problem, but you would not be entitled to claim the refund of that particular IGST. Then out of a lot of hue and cry, after having a judgment from the Gujarat High Court in case of Cosmo Films, where this 9610 was challenged and the Gujarat High Court upheld the validity of it, to my limited understanding, I understand there is a review petition pending against it. Still, as of now, 9610 is a valid rule. But through a retrospective amendment on 23/3/2020, what basically this 9610 says is, okay, if by chance at the time of procurement you have claimed the benefit of any IGST or GST, but if you pay that subsequently, then in that case, still you would be entitled to claim refund of IGST, which you have paid on your exports. Basically, it says is for all the procurements which you're making in all these specific notifications, you take benefit of basic custom duty, any other custom duty which is applicable, maybe anti-dumping duty also. Don't claim benefit of IGST, export goods and export goods on payment of IGST. Now, where is the problem? Why am I bringing this here? The problem is all those people have now started realizing, and there is a notices issued from DRI. In fact, DRI Calcutta, I had to come to DRI Calcutta to basically explain to, and some of the clients which are there in Jaipur, DRI Calcutta had issued the notices. Then DGGST started issuing the notices, and now NT-Vision CGST has also started issuing the notices. Now, all of people have understand if you have claimed the benefit of IGST at the time of procurement, we have to give it back to the government so that our refund is safe and refund is secure. Now, the subsidiary issue which arises from this is Now government is saying, or at least the departmental officer is saying, you might have paid the IGST, but there you claim an input tax credit of that IGST which you have paid on all these procurements subsequently. Because at the time of filing of bill of entry, you did not pay IGST. Your bill of entry showed 0 IGST. Subsequently, you paid a TR6 challan to the concerned port. Though you might have complied with 9610, you cannot claim ITC of that particular IGST which you have paid because it is not mentioned on your bill of entry. And all those cases, probably again, we have a judgment in respect of Steel Authority of India, CSTAT. Again, it's an old judgment in respect of Senvat Credit Rules 2002, where it clearly says that in case of Senvat Credit also, the duty paying document for claiming Senvat Credit was bill of entry. In those cases, if I had a bill of entry and my TR6 has a reference of my bill of entry number, I am entitled to claim the credit of it. Same analogy we can apply under GST, under Rule 36, which we have, where it talks about the list of documents on which you can claim the credit. One of the list of documents is bill of entry, and another document as may be prescribed. And one may take shelter of the Steel Authority and say, I am entitled to claim the credit of whatever IGST I am paying on those specific imports. Then we come to the specific issue of refund under LUT. I would not touch inverted duty structure, but I was saying that there is one problem again which is there. That is, they say your GSTR 2A, whatever credit is appearing in your GSTR 2A, only to that extent you can claim the refund. And it says to all those who are basically doing exports under LUT. However, all of us know 36 sub-rule 4 still says that you can claim ITC to the extent of 105%. Now, this contradiction is very dangerous for all those who are exporting goods 100% under LUT, and specifically all those who are into mining, who are into textile, where the rate of tax is quite low and they cannot export goods on IGST. They have to ensure that in their GST returns, they only take that particular ITC which is appearing in GSTR 2A and also forming part of the books of account. If by chance they take any ITC which is not part of their GSTR 2A, then in that case, they may reach to a situation where they may not be able to liquidate the ITC unless they go into payment of IGST route for claiming the refund. Like for example, let's say I have an invoice of 200 rupees, or total ITC of 200 rupees on my invoices in my books of account. My GSTR 2A only says 180. Let's say I'm claiming ITC of 189, that is 100 plus 5%, that is 105% of 180. And then in that case, when I'm going to file the refund claim, as per circular number 135, I would only be entitled to claim refund of 180, but not 189 because 9 is not appearing in my GSTR 2A. So the contradiction is I may claim ITC, but I may not be able to claim refund. And an exporter who is only exporting goods and not having any domestic supplies, he would wonder, what am I going to do with this 9 rupee which is left with me? And someday he has to plan that for one specific month, he has to actually make exports under payment of IGST, use all this credit which is accumulated, not claim ITC in that particular return at all, and take all the credit in the subsequent return. Now that planning, again, it may be subject to scrutiny by the government, but that is the only way to basically liquidate this ITC of rupees 19. Then we come to last few slides, which are very interesting, but in fact, these are quite direct value addition to the client. This is something which we should tell a client directly. And I'm sure if you are able to do this for your client, he will understand that you are a professional who is different from somebody who would just read the law and only answer to the questions. But this is something which is a proactive exercise. What is this? Interest on delayed IGST refund. So I'm sure majority of the clients who are making exports on payment of IGST, some of them would have always complained that whenever I'm making export, all the invoices from the Igst, they're getting transmitted. I get a notice from the GST portal by saying that all the invoices have transmitted. When I go to my Igst login, I see no error. In fact, SB000, SB00, which is a code which says that your invoices have been processed, there is no problem, shipping bill has matched. I am entitled to a refund, but I'm not getting a refund. Now, somebody who knows this practically, somebody would say that the officer sitting at the port, he has to generate a scroll. And generally that is done by an assistant commissioner or the deputy commissioner. So he has to generate a scroll. He might not have generated a scroll. Now, I would request somebody if you can mute your mic. Pratap Mukherjee ji, if you can mute your mic, that would be better. Okay. So if somebody who is only exporting goods and somebody who is only exporting goods, let's say he does not know whether my scroll has been generated or not, then in all those cases, I would request if you can mute yourself. Okay, I have muted them. Okay, yeah. So now scroll is not generated. So what happens? There is no error. SB00 says no error. I am entitled for a refund, but I am not getting a refund for a reason which is not known to me. Whether in all those cases can I claim interest from the government? And the answer to that was given by the Gujarat High Court in 2020 in case of Natural Saraf Stone versus Union of India, where where on 16 July 2019 a judgment was passed, where the question which was raised by the petitioner was that I have claimed IGST, I have claimed refund of IGST on my exports, but the problem is I have not got the refund. Now your section 54 subsection 7 says that technically I should be entitled to a provisional refund within 7 days, and that should be 90% of my application of refund. According to the GST provisions, when or in fact read with customs, whenever I'm making exports on payment of IGST, my shipping bill is my refund application. So if I have filed my shipping bill properly and I have filed my returns properly, technically I should get 90% of it within 7 days. If I don't get it, then the provision read with section 56 says I'm entitled for an interest at the rate of 9%. And 56 also says that if I don't get a refund within 2 months from filing of the passing of the order, and what is the order? Again, that order is that shipping bill only. If I don't do that, if I don't get that, then government is duty bound to give me interest at the rate of 6%. The petitioner made a calculation. He showed that I have SB005 on these dates. I can show that I have received interest on these dates. Kindly give me refund or kindly give me interest. High Court read it. High Court observed it. High Court said you're absolutely right. You're entitled for an interest, and that interest should have come automatically to you. If it is not coming automatic to you, you should actually approach your CGST officer, and CGST officer is duty bound to give that. I tried to actually use this in my particular state, and I was in fact surprised to see that actually officers were when they read it, when they understood it, they have started giving this particular interest. You should also do that in all those cases where the customs are giving refunds on a delayed basis. We are entitled to actually get an interest, not in fact at the rate of 6%, at the rate of 9%. If in case we're not getting the 90% of the amount which is getting processed within 7 days from the filing of the refund of the returns, subject to that SB00 error, SB00 is there and there is no error in that particular return. Last issue which I will touch is basically this IGST on ocean freight. Now that is also quite an interesting issue. Why this issue is interesting? Because all of us right now are currently paying tax under reverse charge on ocean freight. We know a petition is pending before the, matter is pending before the Supreme Court, where department has gone to the Supreme Court, where department has basically, against the judgment of the Gujarat High Court, they have gone to Supreme Court, and now Supreme Court has to basically hear the matter. All of us know that we have a possibility that tomorrow Supreme Court may say that the levy in this regard is invalid, not proper, and IGST is not applicable in case of ocean freight. Now, if that happens, can I claim a refund of whatever IGST I am paying if I am not claimed the ITC? Or if I have claimed the ITC, can tomorrow department say that claim of my ITC was incorrect? Both possibilities are there. At least as of now, let's be optimistic. Let's not say that tomorrow department will say that my claim of ITC was incorrect. But in all those cases, specifically who are dealing in exempted goods, who are dealing in print media, who are dealing in those goods where part of the goods are exempted, there the problem is that they might not be able to claim the ITC. They are paying tax on the conservative side that tomorrow, if by chance Supreme Court gives an order by saying that the levy of ocean freight is not unconstitutional or not illegal, they might have a huge interest and a penalty burden. What practice should be followed in all these cases is pay IGST on monthly basis and file a refund application immediately. Don't wait for the Supreme Court order, file a refund application. What is the basis of filing a refund application? We have judgment from Gujarat High Court in case of Mohit Minerals, And we also have the judgment in case of Gokul Agro by the Gujarat High Court only, where they said somebody who has paid IGST is entitled to actually claim the refund of it because the levy has been held as illegal. So in all these cases where people are paying IGST on ocean freight but are unable to actually get a credit of it, for them the best practice or tax compliant practice would be to pay tax and reverse charge, and then in that case claim a specific refund in that regard. Again, my personal experience has been in 2-3 states that they are actually issuing the refunds. They are granting the refunds on an understanding that because they have a Gujarat High Court judgment which says that levy is not proper, and because it treats the levy as unconstitutional, it will have a pan-India effect, and that Gujarat High Court judgment actually bounds all the adjudicating authorities across India and they're duty bound by it. So all of us should actually be able to take benefit of it, and on the basis of it, we should go ahead. I'll take one more extra minute of this recrediting of rejected refunds. This issue has recently cropped up. In fact, I'm sure when Achalji would talk about inverted duty structure, she would also touch this, where all those people who might have claimed refund under inverted duty structure, or maybe let's have claimed a wrong refund. Tomorrow department says my refund was invalid, I have to give it back. And let's say that refund was my input tax credit. I'm saying no problem, I'm ready to give back my refund to you, but please recredit the amount of ITC which was earlier debited. The problem is when you go to the rules, you realize that the provisions are not clear. You do not find a clear provision, maybe in case of 86 sub rule 4 or 86 sub rule 3, where it says that whenever a refund is rejected, it will be recredited to PMT 03. Now, all those refunds, these are sanctioned refunds. These are not rejected refunds. These are sanctioned refunds, subsequently recovered through issuance of a show cause notice. Whether a recredit of that is possible, the legal answer to that is it is very much possible. It is my right. I should be able to get a recredit of it because my refund claim was invalid. My ITC was not invalid. I should get a recredit of it. The problem is officer says, show me the rule. And the only possible rule under which he would be actually able to issue a PMT 03, that is order for recrediting, is 86 sub rule 4. Technically, he should do it automatically. If he is not doing it automatically, the only option is file a refund claim for this recredit. Mind you, friends, we are not filing a refund under inverted duty or a zero rate supply. We are filing a refund claim for getting a recredit under any other category, and then officer has to pass an order in PMT 03. In case he does so, then obviously the only option left is you have to go to the appellate authority. But yes, all of us are entitled to claim the recredit of the rejected refunds if they do it automatically or they otherwise don't do it. Finally, before I end, I always say one thing, that whatever at least I have discussed or any other speaker would discuss, or maybe Achalji would discuss, at the end of it, all of us have to take care of one thing. That is, if I ask you to interpret what is this, probably you will have two answers. You will say either it is B, or you will say this is 13. If you say this is B, or you say it looks like B and your understanding this is B, and I show you like this, your answer would definitely change and you will say, no, it looks like 12, 13, 14. Obviously, the person who is writing 13 does not know how to write 13 properly. But if you think this is 13 and I show you like this, again, your answer will change and you will say it looks like ABC. Similar is the case with any tax law. What we have to interpret remains constant, and things around it keeps on changing. And that is why we say more than law, it's about the facts which you have to take care of. Once you take care of your facts, the other provisions of the law would automatically follow. Thank you so much, all of you, for a patient hearing. I hope I was able to do justice to the topic. I hope I was able to explain few things in the given limited time. I would again thank Vivek ji and Shubham for giving me this wonderful opportunity. And back to you, Shubham.
Thank you so much, Yash. And as we had expected, it has exceeded expectations also. We had a lot of judgments of earlier laws. We simply were not talking about the process of refunds. We were talking about the major issues that we have been regularly facing. And what you highlighted at the end perhaps marks the interpretation of statutes by CA Yash, because we have had a lot of books, but Yash has now, in very simple language, he's conveyed us how important the context is there when we read any law. Is not just the main provision, but the context, which is very important. How are we interpreting it? So thank you so much, Yash, for enlightening us with your ideas. It was thoroughly a very enjoyable session for all of us because we were listening to some wonderful aspects of the earlier laws and how we can actually apply them under the GST law, and number of Supreme Court judgments, number of judgments which we thought might be applicable under GST law. I would not take much of your time because I know that you have a session once again lined up at 5:30, which is again a very challenging task, speaking for continuously for 3 hours. I'll just share this e-memento from our side of ACAE, and thank you so much for giving your time. And I thoroughly enjoyed whatever you had spoken. It was absolutely commendable and wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this memento, and thank you so much for the invitation.
To add over here, ESG,
Yes,
you
sir.
not only made GST easy for those who practice GST, but also for those who don't practice GST. And as Ashley said, we had got many things to learn. The interpretation of statute, the portion which you said, the last one, was the actually icing on the cake. It was like watching the last 2 overs of a 2020 match where 12 runs was required and 2 sixes were there in the last ball.
Thank you so much, sir. My
I'm
pleasure.
looking forward for more session with you, Yashji.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely my pleasure.
Over to Subham.
Sure. Thank you so much, Yash. And I would hope that this e-memento you would keep with you. I know we are not having a physical memento because unfortunately because of COVID, but
Thank you so much.
mail this to you and yeah.
Thank you, Shubham.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Yash, for having joined this session.
Thank you so much.
We'll be happy to have you again sometime in the future once again.
Absolutely. Absolutely my honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. With this, we come to the end of the first part of our discussion. And now we have another very interesting topic and a very good speaker, Achal Ji Kapoor with us. And we have our very own Shivani Di, who was the chairman of the IDT committee last year, who's joining us as a moderator. Welcome, Shivani Di. So,
yes, I'm right here.
Yeah. So it's great. So
Over
Shivani,
to me,
thank you.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So very, very good evening to all of us, all the participants who've tuned in. I believe we are in big numbers. That's a pretty large number for an evening session. Good evening to our president. It's the first GST session we are holding under the new team of ACAE. And I also warmly welcome our speaker, Achal Kapoor. Achal, are you around already?
Yeah, she's there. Kindly make him a co-host, Subham.
Yes. Right. So without much ado, because I'm sure all of us are very keen on listening to Achal, especially because she is Achal, the lovely speaker that she is. I'll request everyone else to go on mute, please. Thank you. And also, very recently, we had a judgment which has created ripples across the industry. So Achal would be speaking on the prospects of this decision, which has been laid down before us by the Honorable Apex Court. And she would also be highlighting her brief on the aspects of refund on inverted duty structure. But before that, as protocol calls, I would briefly introduce our speaker for today, a very young, vibrant Achal Kapoor. She is the Joint Secretary at the All India Federation of Tax Professionals. She has been in practice for over a decade in the field of indirect taxes. She has a very practical exposure in the field of GST by handling very different type of departmental work. She's delivered over 200 lectures and seminars on GST, and she is also associated with a lot of organizations and contributes articles regularly. And let us also tell you that she qualified in the first attempt in chartered accountancy, and she is all over the virtual world. Whether we talk about YouTube, WhatsApp, she's all over deliberating on the various subjects of GST. A very, very warm welcome to you, Achal, and we look forward to a very interactive session with you. Over to you, and Achal, feel free if you would like to take up the questions in the chat box while you're deliberating, or would you like to reserve the last 15 minutes? That is absolutely your call. With these very few words, once again, welcome all of you. And Achal, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Shivani ma'am. You yourself is an inspiration for us. I keep watching your Facebook post, and I think one day even वहाँ उस लेवल तक तो I can't even think of, but at least it encourages me to be fit and fine. So
Thank you.
with these great words for you and for the ACAE, which gave me this opportunity to interact on this platform. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shubhamji, for interacting and managing all the sessions all the time. So with this, friends, I know you had a very, very good session by none other than Yashji on the refunds itself. And I hope I would be able to justify the next 1.5 hours. And to all the participants, I would love to see your messages flowing in the chat box. The topic is very, very interesting. Although the judgment runs into 140 pages, I will be summarizing it all up. But previously I thought, my dear friends, that I will be taking up the judgment first and then the provisions. But when I went through the entire judgment, I felt that there are certain things which we must be knowing prehand, so that while reading the judgment, while going through it, we should not face any sort of difficulty. So Shivani ma'am, is it fine if I start with the provision first and then proceed on to the judgment part?
Absolutely, your call, Achal. Whichever way you feel you are comfortable. But as I said, the call I leave on to you, whether you'd like to take the question simultaneously or we could reserve it towards the end of the session. And just for the sake of, sanctity, I would request all the other participants to please be on mute while our learned speakers deliberating.
All right, thank you. And so friends, if the the query will be related to the topic, I will be taking it there and then. If it is somewhere away from what we are discussing, so then we can take it later on. All right, chaliye. So let me share the PPT first, because I know you have already 1.5 hours of session. So without taking much of the time, friends, this is a complete PPT, but I will be sharing only the relevant portion of this PPT. And let me open the chat box too, so that I can interact with you all. Right. So I hope you all can see the PPT. At least I can see a few messages of yes or a thumbs up in the chat box that yes, we are ready to go for it. I should not feel I'm interacting with this black box. Absolutely right, Subramaniam ji and Shivani ma'am. Great to see. Now, friends, agar मैं बात करूं refunds की, you all have gone through the provisions. You are well aware of certain legal provisions. You talked about Act, Section 54 to 58. We talked about, you must have talked about the rules. I was seeing in between that Yashji was referring to Rule 96 and some other rules with practical examples too. And notifications and circulars. You dealt with Circular 125 in detail, which is one of the master circulars, right? Old circulars stood withdrawn by the introduction of this master circular. Now, what I am taking those portions of refunds that are more closely connected with the IDS and inverted duty structure and the judgment of BKC footsteps. All right. So friends, now you see in every place in the judgment or otherwise, there is a reference to explanation 1 to section 54. Generally, my dear friends, where are the definitions given? These are generally given in Ashish ji, the part 2, the section 2 of the particular act. But the refund definition is given in the explanation 1 to section 54 itself. Talking about that the refunds include these 4 categories of refund. You might have done it in the previous section, but because I am discussing it in the perspective of the VKC judgment, now let me talk about it. VKC judgment particularly refers to this explanation during its course, that it's an inclusive definition and it has 4 parts. It is talking about 4 types of refunds. Zero rated supplies, where it says tax paid, yani on payment basis judgment, payment basis. Second, input or refund on input or input services used in making such zero rated supplies, LUT basis. Third is deemed export basis. And the fourth is, why I am highlighting the fourth point, because in the judgment as has been referred, then in the fourth point, they have particularly mentioned the word unutilized input tax credit as provided under subsection 3. So even in the definition of refund, where it is only talking about the 4 cases, we have various other cases that are provided in section 54 subsection 8, read with the circular, but the definition, the explanation that what refund is and what it includes divides it into 4 parts: zero rated separate, deemed export separate, payment basis of zero rated separate, and unutilized ITC, thereby referring to IDS. That even for the purpose of IDS, they have used the word unutilized input tax credit. So this is what we were talking about, the definition of refund. Now, types of refunds, you all have dealt those. Now, let me come to the main section, section 54, subsection 3. That talks about the refund of unutilized input tax credit. 54 subsection 3 is the Bhishma Pitama of refund section. Because हमारी जो main refund के issues आते हैं, those generally come when we have exports and when we have inverted duty structure. Section 54 subsection 3 says, now please read with me. I am not putting on my interpretation into it as of now. Legally, as आप सब judge हैं, and I will be the presenter from both the sides, from the department side also and from the assessee side also. So now at last you all have to give me the judgment that where you think it should have landed or it has landed. We will discuss all the things, right? Now please read the section carefully. You know, even a word like the carries a reference, a point into it. So please read it with me up to that level. Subject to the provisions of subsection 10. Subsection 10 talks about deduction in the refund. Forget it for a time. A registered person may claim the refund of any. This word any is of vital importance. A registered person may claim refund of any unutilized input tax credit. So 2 words that carry the relevance, use of the word any and unutilized input tax credit. Now, if I talk about the definition, any word, general word, unutilized, not defined anywhere, input tax credit, that has been defined. So input tax is given under section 2 clause 62 and input tax credit has been given under section 2 clause 63. आप एक registered person है, let's convert it. आप may claim कर सकते हैं refund claim of any. This word any has been taken as the base. Any unutilized input tax credit ले सकते. बट यहां तो एक जनरल प्रोविजन दे दिया कि आप सारे अनयूटिलाइज्ड इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट का रिफंड ले लीजिए. नाउ द वर्ड्स दैट आर मिसिंग इन द लॉ, there can be a number of situations. Now I add on the words. There can be a number of situations where the refunds can be granted. Now they are putting it into the proviso, provided that पहले तो general कर दिया, you will be getting the refund of all sort of unutilized input tax credit, thereby putting a, I will not use the word, thereby putting what? Thereby giving the provisos, provided that no refund of unutilized ITC shall be allowed. हमने आपको जो ऊपर कहा unutilized input tax credit का refund ले लीजिए, that comes into a number of situations, but we will not be providing you the refund. No refund, negative wording used, no refund of unutilized input tax credit shall be allowed in cases other than two negative makes up positive. It means in the following two situations, the refund will be granted, and in no other situation whatsoever arises, the refund will be granted. All right. Now, could you observe what word is missing in the first line? Provided that no refund of unutilized input tax credit shall be allowed. What word is missing, my dear friends? The word any is missing. Any word was there in the first part, but in the proviso, there are 3 provisos to it. Proviso number 1, proviso number 2, proviso number 3. In proviso number 1, the word any is missing. Provided that no refund of unutilized input tax credit shall be allowed in cases other than, first, zero-rated supplies made without the payment of tax, where the credit has accumulated on account of rate of tax on inputs being higher than, the words used here is inputs, credit has accumulated on account of rate of tax on inputs being higher than rate of tax on output supplies, except the supplies of goods or services जो गवर्नमेंट नोटिफाई करेगी. एक्सेप्ट के बाद के पॉइंट्स अभी हमारे लिए इतने रिलेवेंट नहीं है. कुछ चीजें ऐसी थी, एज यू नो, ऐसी हैं, एज बिफोर जुलाई 2018, 13 months, first 13 months of GST, the fabric was in negative list. So government can put the restrictions. This point is important. So it shows, I ask you a question. Is refund a constitutional right? Yes or no? Yes or no? Except government is putting the restriction. Now also we have various locomotives, railway locomotives, where the refund is restricted. There are certain services like construction services where the refund is restricted. Ashish ji kehte no, it is not a constitutional right. Very validly said, refund is not a constitutional right. It is a statutory right. If the statutes provides for the refund, it will be granted. If the statute is not providing for the refund, it will not be granted. So that is why pehle government kept fabric in the negative list for refund, not allowed, and then they shifted it. Except supplies of goods or services as may be notified by the government on the recommendation of the council. Now, when we read this proviso, we found that there are 2 points, 1 and 2. Zero-rated supplies made without payment of tax, accumulated ITC inputs being higher than the outputs. Input rate is higher than the rate of inputs. All right, chaliye. Now we proceed to the practical issues. I will come to the later to the judgment later on. Now, if I start with the IDS scheme, let me ask you one question first before I move to the slide. If I talk about cement industry, my dear friends, and I want answers from all of you. Otherwise, I will skip the points. Sachi mein, clear cut. All right, chaliye. So if I say that a particular person is importing the goods, let's suppose cement is getting imported. Cement he is importing. The government is, he's importing cement at 280 rupees per bag. Government said, at the custom valuation, they have their own tariffs, everything, valuation rules on their own. And they said, no, this bag is worth 310 and the duty will be collected at the rate of 310. For your information, on cement, we don't have any BCD. They charge only IGST at the rate of 28%. Person imported at 280. Custom valued it at 310. Charge GST at the rate of 28%. A person said, I to imported at 280. He is selling the goods at 300 rupees per bag. My question is, he has a credit accumulation because the purchase, the input is being done at 310 at the rate of 28%. Output is 300 at the rate of 28%. He has a credit accumulation, whether he is eligible for the refund of ITC as per section 54 subsection 3, yes or no? Yes or no? Ashish ji kehte hain no. All right. Anybody else? Prateek ji kehte yes, he is eligible. All right. Anybody else? One vote for no, one vote for yes. Chaliye, I decide here the matter. So it is no, not eligible. सर कहीं तो जाइए, जो yes में भी नहीं है, जो no में भी नहीं है, इसका मतलब वो सुन ही नहीं रहे. Right? चलिए ध्यान से देखते हैं. The answer is no. Reason. Inverted duty structure की definition क्या है? This is not exports, my dear friends. Section 54 subsection 3 proviso said in only 2 cases the refund of ITC allowed. What? Case number 1, 0 rated. It is not a 0 rated supply. Second, rate of tax on inputs being higher than the rate of tax on output. It means, but here, was it a case that there was a rate differentiation? No, it was not a case of rate differentiation. The credit was accumulating due to valuation. Valuation and not rate. Rate 28%, rate 28%. So it is not a fit case for IDS. This is not IDS. And when it is not neither 0 rated nor it is IDS, it is not a case which falls under section 54 subsection 3. I hope Prateek ji the point stands clarified, and to all others. Now, what it emphasizes, rate on inputs is greater than the rate on outputs. The credit is accumulating. As a result, the person can be given the refund. Now, the issue which arose here, they said ITC rate on inputs is greater than the rate on output supply. We will not give you the refund of capital goods and input services. In case of 0 rated, you must have dealt in the previous session that input plus input services, both are allowed as refund. Whereas in case of proviso number 2, that second part of this proviso, it is only the refund of inputs that is allowed, not input services or not goods. Friends, isi mein the circular came. What was the circular? That if a person is a trader, he is purchasing X goods, he is selling X goods. He is purchasing X goods, he is selling X goods. Let's suppose he purchased the goods at the rate of 18% and he sold the X goods at the rate of 12%. The rate reduced. Let's suppose the lights, he purchased at 18% and when he was selling, the rate reduced at the rate of 12%. He says, I have credit accumulation. Circular 137 says, no, it is not. 135 says, no. It is only a reduction on rate of goods. It is not a case of inverted duty structure, input and output being same. It means it says, trader, you are not eligible for the refund under IDS. The output and input must be different. It means only a manufacturer is entitled to the refund. Although to some extent, I consider this provision goes ultra vires the section 54 subsection 3. Reason being, nowhere in the section, it puts the condition input and output should not be same. But yes, this is the law. As you go for the refunds, although there are credit accumulation, friends, you know what I'm doing? I'm discussing with you a number of cases and creating a base where you all will say credit is accumulating. Any issues? Credit is accumulating, but there is no IDS. We talked about cement example, one thing. That was due to valuation. Secondly, we talked about the trader case. Credit is accumulating, not eligible for the refund. There can be loss. You are selling the goods at loss. The goods got deteriorated. The quality was hampered. There is accumulation, but not eligible for refund. There can be a number of instances there can be a number of instances where the credits are accumulating. One more example. Anybody of you want to give it? Very, very common. Person closing down the business. There is credit lying at his disposal, but not eligible for refund because neither he was exporting nor it is inverted duty structure. And all these cases have been dealt in the judgment of VCM footsteps. So if I talk about, there can be a number of instances where the credit can be accumulated, but no refund is eligible. Refund is a statutory right given by the statute and not a constitutional right. A statute provides you for refund, you are eligible. If it doesn't provide for you the refund, it is not eligible. Chaliye, now we move further. This is the base formula. Section 54 subsection 3 read with rule 89 sub rule 5, and this was the formula which has been challenged as per the law, as in the judgment of VCM. Now see, normally if I ask you, how will you calculate the refund? The answer comes, whatever is the net ITC, divided in the ratio of sale turnover, divided in the ratio of sale turnover minus the tax payable. Jitna use ho gaya wo minus kar dijiye. This formula is based upon whatever net ITC you have, divide in the ratio of turnover, divided by adjusted total turnover, multiplied by the inverted. This much portion of ITC belongs to inverted duty structure. This much portion of ITC, I took 100 rupees. Let's see the example. I took 18,000 rupees as ITC. My entire turnover is adjusted total turnover divided by 1 lakh. I am only dealing in inverted duty structure goods. Multiply by 1 lakh, 18,000. According to this, because my entire turnover is inverted duty, so 18,000 minus on 1 lakh, 5% tax I pay, 5,000. What is the remaining balance left with me? 13,000, and the entire 13,000 is eligible for the purpose of refund. This is what the formula says. 18,000 divided by 1 lakh, multiply by 1 lakh, minus 5,000, 13,000. Friends, this formula has been taken at length while discussing the judgment of VCM. Now let's see a few practical examples of this formula, and I will also tell you, in many of the cases, I have found that the formula is not being correctly applied while calculating the refund. Have a look. That you all know. Once you calculate the formula, then you have to compare it. This is how the screen looks. This portion deals with the formula. This formula, my dear friends, gives you maximum refund amount. Maximum refund. Because it is subject to certain things. Now let me discuss those things. I asked you, as per the formula, you think 50,000 should be eligible amount. 50,000 should be eligible refund, right? But you know this, when it was Shivani ma'am, this 50,000 belonged to your period, let's suppose January 2021. Okay, 50,000 should be the eligible refund amount. When next month came, Shivani ma'am said, okay, the client, you have some ITC lying with you. Do you want to use that ITC? Of course, he would say, I would like to use that. He used from the accumulated balance of ITC, say 10,000. Next month, he used 5,000. He has already used 15,000. So today, the balance in the ledger is 35,000. So this formula puts a check. I cannot give you a refund of 50,000 because you have already used 15,000 rupees. So that is why it says the formula gives the maximum refund amount. Then you have to check how much is the balance line at the end of the refund period during the month he use कर लिया. January month में January में use कर लिया. आपकी कोई और sale थी, कोई और turnover थी, inverted duty नहीं थी. You needed the output tax. You use the input. Let's suppose 5,000. balance at the end of the month. Now we go by the example. Let's suppose it was used 20,000 during the month. 2,000 was used later on. So what is the balance lying on as on date? It is 28,000. 20,000 was used in the same month, 2,000 was. So then they put a check the balance, and the least of the three, that is 28,000, is the eligible refund. Formula always gives the maximum amount. अब friends, ये formula हमें total amount बताता है कि okay, you are eligible for a refund of 28,000. 28,000. Now the question comes, how to divide it? If I talk about how to divide it, सबसे पहले IGST में से, to the extent IGST is available, then CGST, SGST equal, or agar CGST is lesser, then you can recover it from the other head. Have a look on the illustration, which are very, very important, and then we will move on to the judgment part. Friends, if I talk about the examples, now in this case, you see input A and input B. Input A is at 5%, input B is at 18%. 5%, 18%. Output Y. Friends, why I changed the output? Abhi I said input and output cannot be same. So for using input A and input B, you made output Y. When you made output Y, that was taxable at the rate of 12%. 12%. This person says, on this, the question arose, 5% rate to kam hai. 5% rate is already lesser than 12%. So my question to you is, should I ignore this 5% and consider only 18%? Yes or no? Yes or no? Should I? Because 5% is already lower. Ashish ji, absolutely correct. No, आज मुझे एक ही नाम याद आना है. That is Ashish ji. Yes, sir.
नहीं यहाँ पर स्क्रीन का ये
I request the other participants to kindly mute.
कर दीजिए, आप में प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा.
नहीं ऐसे बेटर लग रहा है.
चलिए.
और जब वो लो इसलिए हो रहा है क्योंकि हम फंक्शन F3 कर रहे थे, फिर फंक्शन F3 कर रहे थे, तो वो
I can see the name, Mr. It went. Chaliye, anyhow, I think so. He is muted. Now, if I talk about input A and input B, input A and input B, no, both the inputs. If I talk about the net ITC, you don't have to see. Just see. Now the question comes, even if I have one input which is above the rate, answer is yes. Even if you have only one input which is more than the rate of output, you are eligible for IDS, inverted duty structure. Inverted duty structure. Now, if I talk about this case, in this case, 360 is also the input tax. 25 is also the input tax. Entire entity has an input of 385 rupees. In this case, 12% is the output. Output comes 360. Now see, 385 was the input, 360 is the output. The person must have used it. And the balance must have been left as 25 rupees. What is my point of analysis here? You don't have to ignore the inputs whose rate is... Can you mute the other participants?
I'll handle this. Just give me a minute. Please.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
May I kindly request everyone other than a speaker to be on mute? I think someone in the name of Mr. Ram Shankar Ray, we can hear some noise from your end. You know, for the sanctity of this seminar, I request everyone other than a learned speaker to kindly be on mute. I still see, Mr. Ray, that you are not on mute. We are unnecessarily wasting the time of our audience and our speaker. Please, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Achal, sorry for this. I beg your pardon.
No, it's okay. Perfectly okay.
Continue.
Thank you so much. All right. So friends, what is the point of analysis? you don't have to ignore the inputs which are lower the rate of output. When I talk about net ITC, it means net ITC of the entire unit, entire inputs A and B, both are eligible for the purpose of inputs in order to calculate the refund amount. I hope this point stands clear. But what is not there is the input services. Now, this client comes to me and says, I have an input which is taxable at 12%. Output wise being, I first check, okay, are you a manufacturer? The answer is yes. Input A, input service B, output Y. All right. Now, 12%. Input is at 12%, output is at 12%. Input service, 18%. Credit is accumulating. How much? 60 rupees is the credit accumulation. 60 plus 360, 60 plus 360 minus output 360. Now you see the credit accumulation in this case is even higher than the last case. But still, this person is not eligible under the IDS, reason being the credit accumulation is due to input service and not due to the input. It is not a fit case for inverted duty. Last example, and the very, very related example, it doesn't always happen that the person is only dealing in inverted duty goods. It might be possible he has various outputs. Some might be inverted duty and some might be other than inverted duty. And here is where the problem lies. In many times I've seen the officer says, okay, are you into manufacturing and trading? The person says yes. He said, okay, cross. Trading is not eligible for refund. Definitely, Mr. Officer, trading is not eligible for refund and we are also of the same view. But not like this, that you will cross trading. I show you what will happen if you will cross trading. Look, he will take manufacturing, 25 plus 360 minus 360, eligible refund comes out to be 25 as per the formula. And now I show you how it should actually be dealt. Have a look. Manufacturing and trading, both had to be considered. How much is the input? 25, 360 and 600. All the inputs, 25, 360, 600. Total input is 985. Person, you have two outputs, 360 and 612. Total output is 972. Person says 985 is the input, 972 is the output, 13 rupees is the balance lying in the credit ledger. Now you see, there we're getting 25 rupees as per the formula. Now how the formula should work? In this case, my dear friends, the total turnover of the assessee is 8,100. 3,000 manufacturing and trading is 5,100. Now, trading is not eligible for refund. Absolutely correct. But how to apply this formula? Net ITC of the entire concern, including trading, including manufacturing, 985, divided by adjusted total turnover, 8,100, multiplied by what? Inverted duty turnover, that is only 3,000. Even if your trading would have been 5% and 12%, not to include the turnover of the trading. Trading has to be left in the formula and not by crossing in the ITC. The multiplier will only be the manufacturing turnover, that is 3,000 rupees. Proportionate minus tax only on 3,000 rupees. Reason, अरे हमने proportionate कर दिया. Total ITC we took 985. 985 को हमने कहा टर्नओवर रेशियो में डिवाइड कर दीजिए, डिवाइडेड बाय 8,100 into 3,000. अब वो कितने के पर्टेनिंग आईटीसी रह गया? दैट आईटीसी इज पर्टेनिंग only and only the output Y, manufacturing. So tax भी किसका less करूंगी? Only 360 rupees. The refund as per the formula comes out to be 4 rupees 81 paise. 4 rupees 81 paise. So in this case, my dear friends, the refund amount, had it been a different situation, your manufacturing higher and your trading lower, this proportionate formula would have given you different results, higher amount as compared to now it is lower down. You have an ITC accumulation of 13 rupees, but you are getting the refund of only 4 rupees 81 paise. Reason, proportionate effect. The formula is drafted in such a way that the trading part is coming in between and restricting your refund. And such anomalies have been highlighted in the judgment also. Now, let me just give me a while. Now, in this case, my dear friends, the issue is take net ITC of the entire concern divided by total turnover multiplied by the particular inverted duty structure. Now, sometimes a question comes to me and I pose the same question to you. If I ask you, I have in my P&L account certain consumables which are at a rate of 28%. And the entire other inputs are at the rate of 12%, and output is also at the rate of 12%. Whether it is a fit case for IDS, yes or no? Yes or no? In GST, there is no distinction between the trading and P&L account. Even if you have any inputs that are directly or indirectly related, may it be the stones, may it be the stores, spares, packings, machinery repair, printing and stationery, if you have credit accumulation, any of the even spare stores have a rate higher than the output, the person concerned is eligible for refund under IDS. So the slides which we discussed are as it is, what the law is presently going on, how department was sanctioning the refund. And if you want, if you people want, I would like to discuss this example with you where we practically face a difficulty, and then we will move to the judgment. We have just spent half an hour on it. Look, there are certain cases, a person is selling a product, exporting a product, and the same product is also inverted duty. Inverted duty bhi hai और exports bhi kar raha hai for single transaction. Example, I am procuring the inputs at the rate of 18%, and I am exporting the product for this ease, for the purpose of ease, I take the output rate to be 10%. Same thing is getting exported and is also inverted duty. How sometimes the question comes, do I need to make two applications of refund? The answer to it is no. For the same invoices, you need not to apply simultaneously under two categories. And in this case, we always advise our client to go for without payment of tax option. Reason, have a look. Let's suppose he purchased at 18%, 100 rupees. 100 rupees purchases at the rate of 18%, ITC was 18 rupees. He exported at 120 at the rate of 10%. Output is 12%. How much refund he will get? He will be getting in a with payment of option. In with payment of tax option, he will be getting a refund of only 12 rupees. Only 12 rupees. No other refund can be applied. The second proviso to section 54 subsection 3, some people says, madam, koi baat nahi, hum with payment of tax mein 12 rupees का refund ले लेते हैं, एक और application लगा देंगे and we will take the balance refund of 6 rupees. The answer to it is no. The proviso to section 54 subsection 3 says, if you are going under the with payment of tax option, you cannot come under section 54 subsection 3. In this case, ₹6 is the loss to assessee. Now, the same person, if goes for without payment of tax option, ITC is 18 rupees, output tax 0, 18 ka 18 will be refunded under only one application, export without payment of taxes. In this case, 18 is the refund. In this case, 12 is the refund, resulting in ₹6 as loss. I hope the point stands covered and the picture of the inverted duty structure is clear to all of you. Friends, in this, one more thing I would like to highlight here. As I told you, in case of the fabrics, first 13 months, refund was not allowed. The matter went and the government said after 13 months, after July 2018, 13 months of GST completed, now the fabrics will be eligible for refund. But at that time, they put a condition, the entire ITC in your ledger will lapse. The matter went to the court that giving a refund or not is a statutory right. But when I have fulfilled the condition of ITC, that is my vested right. आप मुझे ये बोलो refund नहीं मिलना, okay, accepted. But आप मुझे ये बोलो कि आपका ITC lapse हो जाएगा, this is not as per the law provision. This provision was challenged in case of Shabnam Petrophils and the judgment was favorable. The Gujarat High Court came in favor of the SSC, stating the input tax credit should not lapse. However, this judgment has already been challenged in the Honorable Apex Court with a stay on it, and as a result, as of now, we have reversed the ITC on whatever balance was lying in the credit ledger. Friends, in this, if you will like, I will share the entire PPT. There are certain other things also relating to export and invoices. Or if you say I will share the relevant part, there are certain issues that when we consider import, export, and what can be the with different case studies. So accordingly, I will share as will be discussed. So with this, now I would like to shift on to the judgment. Just allow me a moment to shift the PPT. Meanwhile, my dear friends, anybody who has any issue in the current the legal provisions, please come up with it, because now we are going to go for the complete analysis for the same. बेटा जी दे दो.
Achal, would you want them to unmute and speak, or would you like them to just post on the chat box? How would you like it?
Anyway they like. I don't mind.
Because
I don't mind. Anyway they like that.
I will just ask them, does anyone from our audience want to unmute and ask our speaker any specific question? Anyone at all? So probably we could have a raise of hands, and depending on that, we could probably unmute one, and then we can go with the rest.
Yes, absolutely. Anybody who has any issue, because when we will once move to the judgment, if the basic provisions will not be clear, then the judgment will not become handy to them.
Right. So we'll just wait for a few seconds to see Achal. Otherwise, I would request you to continue. Anyone? No. I think, Achal, we can continue with the session. I think you are overtly clear. That's what it implies. So over to you. You could start with your session, and maybe towards the last, if at all we have any queries, we'll take those up.
Surely. Shivani ma'am, it has two meanings. Either nothing is clear or everything is clear. So now it depends upon them how the things are going on.
No, believe me, when we have a speaker like you,
Nothing of the sort.
More lean towards understanding more. You know, while we often joke that as a speaker, our idea is to confuse you more, but that is always on a lighter note. So coming from you, Achal, believe me, we've always had this feedback from our audience that you are one of the most prolific speakers we have today. Young, vibrant, prolific, and beautiful. So I think, you know, when someone is speaking so well and you see a pretty face, जिसको बोलते हैं ना हम लोग सोने पे सुहागा.
Oh, bas, ma'am. Let's move towards the judgment now, and let me share the PPT for the VKC. Just give me a while. Bring the judgment pages here. Shivani ma'am, please let me know if it is if you can see the PPT.
Yes, I will let you know. Just a minute, because even I'm on a gallery view. Speak. Yes, it's absolutely clear. It's gone again. Probably you'll just need to start that.
Yeah, can you see it now?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. So friends, trust me. Oh, I could see few messages. Thank you so much, Abhishek ji, Mr. SK. And now we move on to the judgment. And friends, really, I enjoyed reading this judgment. It is a 140-page judgment, but worth reading. Although I am not posing the issues that whether what my view is, we accept what is the view of the learned Supreme Court. And let me make the slideshow for this. It's okay. Okay. Friends, first of all, I will be presenting myself today from both the sides, as I already told you, and we will be discussing certain intricacies of the case which we are going to deal right now. In this case, 15 petitions were clubbed together. Out of that, the leading one was VKC Footsteps, which is in front of you. There were two judgments. One was the judgment of VKC Footsteps itself and by the Honorable Gujarat High Court. Let me give you a brief of it first. The second was TVS Tranenstroy Afcons Joint Venture Private Limited, which was a judgment by Honorable Madras High Court. I tell you, VKC Footsteps was in favor of the assessee, stating refund of Abhi. We discussed an example where I told you only inputs are eligible for refund. Input services and capital goods are not eligible for refund under second limb of first proviso. 54 subsection 3, first proviso, clause number 2. In clause number 1, there is no issue of input services, yani zero rated, there is no issue of input services, only point number 2, which it says inputs. That is why I read those particular wordings with you all. Now, friends, in this case, when two judgments came, VKC said that the provision Rule 89 Sub-Rule 5, which is restricting the input service, Rule 89 Sub-Rule 5, which is restricting the input services refund in case of IDS, is an ultra-virus rule because the section 54 subsection 3 does not put any such condition. Second, TVL said, where the matter was challenged on the basis of Article 14. Article 14 deals with the equality, and this says you cannot make such sort of distinction, classification. In zero rated supplies, you are allowing the refund of input and input services both. In IDS, you are not allowing the refund of input services. But Madras High Court came the classification is permissible in light of the Article 14 itself. You cannot say class 10 ke bacche ko same paper should be given as to class 4. 0 rated is a separate class. IDS is a separate class. It's the government's intention. They can do the stratification and on the basis of intelligible differentia. Not my words. These are all words of the Act of the Constitution of India itself, which says intelligible differentia. Class 10, class 4. Yes, in class 10, all children should be treated alike. If there is inequality in that, that is against the Constitution. But 0 rated and IDS are two separate classes. So as a result, the government, it's government's perspective, because you all said it's a statutory right. Statute jaisa chahe refund grant kar sakta hai. It's not a constitutional right. So as a result, in light of Article 14, the same is correct, and Rule 89 Sub-Rule 5 is not ultra virus. As a result, the input services are not eligible as refund. VKC and TVL, two judgments when the matter went to the Honorable Court. In this case, of course, the appellant will be the department. So when this matter went to the court, it was a 2-member bench of very famous judges, Chandrachud ji and M.R. Shah. The matter was taken up. These are the 15 appeals. Those were tagged together. I am firstly giving you the crux. Chaliye aisa karte, we leave the crux. Leave the crux. Let's jump into the arguments first. And then we will find out today that which one holds good. My first thing, I have jotted out कौन से provisions उन्होंने इस judgment में refer किए हैं. They have referred the various definition clause, जिसमें की main definition clauses of input tax and input tax credit. Section 2 clause 62 and section 2 clause 63. Other than that, they majorly talked about section 16, input tax credit ka conditions. Then they talked about section 54 and the another substantive provisions that are taken up. Section 49, these are the related sections, and section 164. पहले मैं base के लिए बता दूं, section 16 में input tax credit लेने की conditions है, section 54 refunds है, section 49 में mechanism है. और ये मैकेनिज्म क्यों रेफर हुआ सेक्शन 49 में? रीजन बीइंग दिस सेड इट्स अ क्लब्ड बास्केट. इनपुट का इनपुट भी आ रहा है, इनपुट सर्विसेज का इनपुट भी आ रहा है, कैपिटल गुड्स का इनपुट भी आ रहा है. सो वी आर गेटिंग, इट्स अ मिक्स्ड बास्केट वेयर यू आर गेटिंग ऑल टाइप्स ऑफ इनपुट्स, एंड देन दोज इनपुट्स for the purpose of section 49, they says you can use this input for the payment of the output tax. I please request the other participants to kindly mute. मैं भूल जाती हूँ फिर उसके बाद. Right? चलिए. Now, section 54, section 49 ने बोला it's a mixed basket, mix everything and then you pay the taxes. Section 164. Can anybody tell me what 164 says? Friends, 164 says general power of the government to make the rules. अगर किस एक्ट के किसी प्रोविजन में भी पावर चाहिए रूल बनाने के लिए, section 64 authorizes the government to make the rules. Then 89 sub-rule 5 has been discussed at length and reference to the various articles. And you know, these articles are majorly from the Constitutional Amendment Act. It is 101 Constitutional Amendment Act, जिसकी वजह से Constitution was amended and GST was introduced. So all those provisions being referred, now let's see how the matter proceeded. Sequence of events क्या हुआ? These are certain base things which I want to bring to your notice so that we can understand the arguments in a better way. Section 54 subsection 3 सबसे पहले आया, it from right from the beginning 1717 से 1717, रूल 89(5) सब रूल 5 1717 से आया. लेकिन जब ये रूल 17/2017 से आया, इसमें नेट आईटीसी का मीनिंग था इनपुट प्लस इनपुट सर्विसेज, both for IDS as well as for zero rated. I kindly request Mr. Vikram Agarwal to please mute his mic.
I will interject. Anjali, I am afraid I again have to interject, stop the flow of the session. And this is causing an immense amount of disturbance to all the audience and our speaker. Once again, a humble request, if we could please go on mute. I don't think so. That's too much to ask for. Maybe we've not been able to do it. But since your speaker wanted everyone to have the rights to unmute in case you had a question, that's why we are not giving a blanket mute to all of you. But kindly, if you could just go on mute. Thank you so much.
Now, friends, if I talk about, thank you so much, Shivani ma'am. Now, if I talk about when this rule 89 sub rule 5 was introduced, at that time, net ITC included both input and input services for both IDS as well as for zero rate. Then came an amendment on 18th April 2018. Prospective amendment. Okay, that from now onwards, the rule 89(5) stands amended. And what will happen? For IDS, it will include only and only inputs and not input services for IDS. Then on 13th June, there was again amendment in Rule 89(5), giving amendment a retrospective effect from 1/4/2017. I tell you what happened. Jab 54 subsection 3 aaya, I take the example of textiles. टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री ने रिफंड्स लेने शुरू कर दिए. फर्स्ट कुछ मंथ्स रिफंड्स जाते रहे. गवर्नमेंट के नोटिस में आया, एज पर द गवर्नमेंट, कि इनपुट सेक्शन 54 सबसेक्शन 3 में तो वर्ड सिर्फ इनपुट हैज बीन रिटन, और रूल 89(5) में हमने इनपुट को रिस्ट्रिक्ट नहीं किया सेकंड वाले केस में इन आईडीएस. On 18th April, they amended the rule prospectively. Later on, they find because it is as per the law, act में तो पहले ही था, rule में गलती रह गई थी, so they made this amendment and they said this is not a substantive amendment, so that is why they made this amendment retrospective. और जिन्होंने refunds लिए भी थे, they were supposed to pay those back. Now, this was the entire sequence of events. Pehle input and input service both included. Then they removed input service, prospective amendment, and then they removed input services and made this amendment retrospective from 1/4/2017 itself. Friends, this is the index, how this judgment goes. Pehle unhone introduction diya, kuch cheeze batai, factual backdrop bataya that Acae is in the footwear industry and his inputs are taxable at higher rate and the outputs are taxable at lower rate. There is anomaly. Statutory provisions, like I posed before you certain sections, and then the submissions are given, what were the arguments taken, and then how court interpreted those points, and finally the judgment at the end. Now let's have a look. Let me come to the introduction part. Provision challenge concept. मैंने आपको बोला था, the word any is of great relevance. If you remember, word any is of great relevance. The provision was challenged. 54 subsection 3. If you just allow me, I would now like to bring to you the section for a while. Just a minute. Let me make the previous slide come. Here it is. Now, friends, have a look on the section once. What this section says. This section says, now let's analyze it from this perspective. subject to the provisions of subsection 10, a registered person may claim refund of any unutilized input tax credit. First objection, यहाँ पे उन्होंने unutilized input tax credit क्या है कुछ नहीं बताया, and they just mentioned any unutilized input tax credit. Friends, firstly, I am giving you the arguments in favor of. Judgment में you will get against, favor, and then a rejoinder. Against, favor, and rejoinder. I am giving you the arguments into all of you now, which are against, which are in favor. Now look, I am from the assessee side. I say to you, my lord, refund of any unutilized input tax credit is allowed. The word written here is any. No nomenclature to this any has been given. Input tax credit has duly been defined under section 2 clause 62 and 2 clause 63, wherein it includes the input tax credit of inputs, input services, as well as the capital goods. Everything is included. Even the first proviso that is being provided therein talks about of the word unutilized input tax credit. Nowhere it is mentioned that it is only input service or input services. First, in the substantial provision, forget the proviso. Court has very beautifully interpreted the provisos also by giving reference to various judgments. But how it says, any unutilized input tax credit word has been given as per the statute. As per the statute, even the first proviso, which is we are talking about, is saying, हम आपको unutilized ITC का refund तभी देंगे. Two negatives makes a positive. कब? Cases है. This word, please look at the word. Cases, allowed, each and every word they have picked. Allowed in cases. किन केसेस में रिफंड मिलेगा? जीरो रेटेड सप्लाई में मिलेगा और इनपुट का रेट आउटपुट के रेट से हायर होगा. अगर मैं इसको अनदर वर्ड्स में बोलूं, इट इज आईडीएस. आईडीएस में आपको रिफंड मिलेगा. किसका रिफंड मिलेगा? अनयूटिलाइज्ड इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट का रिफंड मिलेगा. So meaning thereby, the word unutilized input tax credit has not been defined. IDS क्या होता है? That has been defined. Inputs rate being higher than the rate of output. What I want to highlight here, this is a word IDS that has been defined. Court said, I say to you, there are a number of cases where the refund can originate. Accumulation can originate. What are those conditions? First, abhi, valuation, loss to the business, selling at lower rates. There can be a number of cases. But the law says, we will give you the refund of what? Unutilized input tax credit. Kab, conditions. These are only the conditions. These are the cases which says तब मिलेगा जब या तो जीरो रेटेड होगा या फिर आईडीएस होगा. आईडीएस किसको मानेंगे? इनपुट्स का रेट आउटपुट के रेट से ज्यादा हो. सो आपको रिफंड किसका है? अनयूटिलाइज्ड इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट. अब यही वर्ड अनयूटिलाइज्ड इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट को आप फर्स्ट पॉइंट के लिए रेफर करते हो आई प्लस आई एस और सेकेंड पॉइंट के लिए रेफर करते हो ओनली आई, which is wrong. This is what were the arguments. Now the section was in front of you. Let me come to the slide which we were discussing. Now when this point was raised, which slide? Just a minute, which one I have shared? Yeah, just a minute. Let me. Is the slide visible?
Yes, Achal, we can see it.
Okay, I can't. All right. So in this, the provisions that were challenged, now I'm exactly on the wording of the judgment itself. 54 subsection 3 does not restrict the refund of all or refund of only to unutilized input tax credit, which is accumulated due to rate of tax of inputs being rate of higher than the rate of tax on output. It allows the refund of unutilized ITC when the rate of tax is higher than the rate. They said it is a condition. कब मिलेगा केस कब मिलेगा, बट ये आपको रिस्ट्रिक्ट नहीं करता है. 54 subsection 3 is covering both input and input services, and rule 89.5, which is stating that only inputs are allowed, is an ultra virus rule. As a result, it is unconstitutional also on the basis of Article 14, because it is making a distinction. It is unconstitutional and leading to the discrimination between the input and input services. You know what valid point they raised? They said, as per the law, there is no difference in the goods and the services. Goods and services are equal and at par at GST. So that's why you cannot make a discrimination between the input and input services. So these were the provisions challenged, and they said section 164 में से power लेके government कोई भी rules बना सकती है, and they have the power to this. This was the original introduction of this entire thing, where they referred to the Madras High Court judgment in case of TVL and the Gujarat High Court judgment of VKC footwear. Now have a look. This is how the submissions are given into it. Union of India, the ASG, Additional Solicitor General, who presented the case, assessee, a number of assessees, the renowned ones, they have given their submissions and the arguments were presented, and then they gave a rejoinder of the reply to those arguments. Have a look. Now, firstly, I am proceeding towards what the Additional Solicitor General had to say. Additional Solicitor General, ASG, said, goods are separate, services are separate, even at the constitutional level. Article 366(12) deals with the goods. Article 366(26)(a) deals with the services. Even in the law, we have different definition of input and input services. As a result, these are two separate categories. These are two separate classes. These are two separate things. You cannot equate them. Article 366(12)(a) defines GST to means a tax on supply of goods, that you all know. He said GST mein goods and services were brought together, both the taxes were integrated together so that the credit of one can be utilized for the credit of another. Single pool must be created. Single pool must be created, and there is no other intention that the goods are equivalent to services. Even in income tax, you see, TCS is there on goods, not on services. Even in various other things, we analyze the provision for goods and services go differently. He mentioned that the words given in the proviso are not merely a condition. These are most important words. The three provisos share common features which indicate that these are the restrictions. These are the restrictions and not the conditions. And this is what the court has also interpreted, कि these provisos के different nature हो सकते हैं. 5 pointer for provisos the honorable court has given. they mention that there can be different types of provisos. Some put the conditions, some put the restrictions. It depends upon how the law is being framed. So these provisos that are given, they are in the nature of restriction. These are not merely, आप बोलते हो कि ये तो cases है, ये तो conditions है कि भाई आपको इस condition में refund देंगे जब आपका input का rate output से ज्यादा होगा, और refund किसका देंगे? In what unutilized ITC का देंगे? No, the law is not to be interpreted like this. These provisos are in the nature of restrictions and these are not the conditions. And when these provisos are to be taken as restrictions, what are the reasons? The words written there are claim, whereas proviso restricts the ambit of that word claim and allowed. You are not allowed to get the refund other than in the cases that are mentioned there. And they mentioned the word any, which was given in the main section, is missing in the proviso itself. So आप zero rated के लिए जो रिफंड है उसको अलग से इंटरप्रेट करोगे, और जो अदर पार्ट है, जो टू पार्ट है, आईडीएस है, उसके लिए डिफरेंट इंटरप्रिटेशन है और वो प्रोवाइजो में इटसेल्फ एम्बेडेड है. ऐसा नहीं है कि मेन सेक्शन is to be read in isolation to the provisos. The main section is a general one. It says allowed in all case. The proviso is putting a restriction. Restricted use of the word any is being provided in the proviso, meaning thereby the proviso to section 54 subsection 3 is a substantial provision in itself. It is not a qualification to become eligible for the purpose of refund, but it is a restriction, and this was the intent of the government. The parliament has chosen that only the refund of ITC on account of credit accumulation due to input should be allowed and not a qualification condition. Statutory, this is what has been in the intent, and this has been conveyed through the statutory language, and express inclusion of only inputs have been made. So when these things were given therein, the expression any, which is absent in the first proviso, further puts a limitation that in the case, second case, it is not all refunds are allowed, input and input services. So we have to read it restrictively. It is a restriction. It is not a condition. It is not a qualification. As a result, only input refund is allowed. Rule 89.5 is very much within the, see, he said classification is okay. Zero rated are separate, IDS is separate. आप export को equate नहीं कर सकते हो IDS के साथ, domestic supplies के साथ. Secondly, classification challenge नहीं हो सकती है. They are different stratas. Thirdly, 54 subsection 3 itself लिख रहा है, the provisos are the restrictions, and those are not the conditions. He referred even in 54. याद है? I showed you the explanation and said this explanation is being dealt. They said even in the explanation, when they have referred to third case, they have not mentioned refund kaun sa dena hai. They have just mentioned unutilized input tax credit as per the proviso to section 54.3. Or proviso mein word likha hai, inputs are only to be considered. So these were the arguments that were forwarded by ASG. Now comes the council arguments. He also referred to a number of things that even the various constitutional amendments made. This is what we discussed, that refund is not a constitutional or not a fundamental right. It is a statutory right. If there is no violation of Article 14, no violation of Article 19(1)(g), and the same states stands complied, government की मर्जी है वो आपको refund दे या ना दे. The last line, It is a legislative amendment which reflects a policy choice which is not subject to judicial review. Please have a look, and this is what the court said. किसको रिफंड देना है, किसको नहीं देना है, this is not a subject matter of judicial review. This is a subject matter of policy review to be taken up by the legislature. Now let me come to the arguments in favor of input services. Learned Council, various learned councils, they presented their arguments. They cited the case laws. The first argument was the basic object of GST. The basic object of GST was seamless flow of credit. And if you are not allowing the refunds, the person is not having any other turnover, that is adding to the cost. And the basic objective of GST, the seamless flow, ultimate consumer should be the bearer, is getting disturbed. The purpose of 101 constitutional amendment to remove the cascading effect of taxes, to create the common national market that is hampered. Situation of economic distortion comes into picture due to the cascading effect. So as a result, the refund of input services should be eligible, considering the very much object of the statute. अगर आपने object ही नहीं पूरा किया, आपने cascading effect ही नहीं remove किया, आप उसका refund allow नहीं कर रहे हो, that is getting added to the cost, there is no fun of it. Second point which they mentioned, they said originally जब section आया था, they covered in Rule 89.5 the input and input services both. Section 54 subsection 3 में ऊपर word लिखा है unutilized input tax credit, which is a common word for both the provisos, and those cannot be taken into isolation. They said these are not the restrictions, these are the conditions. Circular 79 गवर्नमेंट ने खुद इशू किया 31 December 2018 को, and in the circular they have mentioned in clear cut that the ITC availed on inputs. Please read the words. I will share one more objection that was raised, the argument that was presented there. ITC availed on all inputs, including input service, will attract a lower rate of tax. The government in its own circular number 79 is referring to all inputs, including input services. And you cannot say that it is not a precondition. It is only a precondition कि सुनिए refund तो बहुत categories में मिलता है, loss में भी मिलना है, credit accumulation loss में भी होता है, credit accumulation valuation की वजह से होता है, credit accumulation business closure की वजह से होता है. There can be a number, but हम आपको refund किस condition में देंगे? Input का rate output के rate से higher हो, सिर्फ input consider करना. Once you cross that case, once you cross that threshold, the refund of unutilized input tax credit should be allowed. This is what section 54 subsection 3 is referring to. They said quantum of refund मिलना कितना है, ये तो section 54(3) के main proviso में दिया है, by using the word any, by using the word any. And if you are saying the point number 2, the provisos are just giving the cases, the conditions, that okay, quantum तो ऊपर है, only cases have been provided कि ये दो cases में मिलेगा. कौन से दो case? Zero rated and inverted duty structure. Inverted duty structure की definition क्या है? Inputs are higher than, rate of input is higher than rate of output. All the three provisos, they are not determining the quantum. They are only referring to, they are the subparts of the main part of section 54 subsection 3. And they further put the point, the word the input tax credit has been used. The, this word the carries a lot of relevance कि जो आपने ऊपर मेन सेगमेंट में 54 सबसेक्शन 3 में जिस अनयूटिलाइज्ड इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट की बात की है, दिस इज द क्रेडिट, ये वही क्रेडिट है. दे आर नॉट मेकिंग एनी अदर डिस्टिंक्ट क्रेडिट. The use of definite article the is clear cut indicates that whatever quantum has been stated in section 54 subsection 3 in the main segment is the quantum to be decided. Then they further, you see how the arguments, it was a 4 days long arguments and those were worth listening. Now you see, on the words used are and only, they said the words, the proviso is not referring to the extent. No, if the words would have been used, agar legislature ka intention input service ko rokna tha, the words would have been only to the extent, but the words are not this. They said it's a common pool where you put in all the things, input services and capital goods, and now you are saying me only input services. From this point they raised the question of anomaly, which is there in rule 89 sub rule 5 formula also. This is the anomaly that has been raised, that a common pool is created. Even this is what, now see, पहले हमने कहा section 54 की explanation 1 में उन्होंने वर्ड्स यूज किए, आइडियाज को अलग से शो किया. नाउ आई से द सेम थिंग, आई टर्न इन फेवर. 54 में 4 केसेस जो दिए हैं उसमें भी वर्ड अनयूटिलाइज्ड आईटीसी यूज किया है. द लेजिस्लेचर का इंटेंट सिर्फ इनपुट्स का देने का होता. व्हाई द वर्ड अनयूटिलाइज्ड आईटीसी? काउंटर. They said the word unutilized ITC is used by taking it from 54.3. But proviso is also a substantial provision. So proviso is restricting. As a result, it's a restricting provision. They challenged that they made a retrospective amendment. The retrospective amendment to Rule 89 sub Rule 5 is not at all, cannot be substantiated, and it is ultra virus because the act is not referring to it. Classification issue, ultra virus issue, not as per the constitutional provision. Article 14, Article 19 being evaded. Article 14 is on equality. Article 19 is on freedom of doing the business. And they further mention, nowhere in the section 54 the word prescribed for the rules have been referred. कहाँ लिखा है? rules में लिख देंगे, लिखा ही नहीं है. So you are using a journal section 164. So 164 journal rule making power है. So 89.5 जो है वो, that is under the journal power. There can be a number of cases, loss, bulk purchase, excess opening balance, due to which the refunds can arise. So government usko restrict karna chahti thi, और एक delegated legislation like the rules cannot overtake the principal statute. Section 54 में कहीं भी input services ना देने की बात नहीं है. That is a condition, and the condition cannot supersede. One of the learned advocates, he stated here, these are the 4 conditions that are referred in the proviso. The explanation. First proviso dealing with the same, second proviso dealing with the same, and the third proviso. These are the conditions. This is the situation, and this is the condition. You cannot say it is a restriction. Now, let me talk about and one more point which they raise. Tax neutrality. The objective of tax neutral. This is, it is an indirect tax. The ultimate consumer has to bear it. You are making anti-profiteering authorities under section 171 that the ultimate benefit should go to the consumer. Now, where is that concept of tax neutrality when it is coming to the person concerned? The object of achieving the tax neutrality, you are sorting that in section 171. The benefit must go to the consumer. Then why the mediator, the manufacturer has to bear the burden and it is not getting passed on to the consumer? They said it is not by choice. It is by the legislation that this inverted duty structure has been considered. They further mentioned that the word claim means a demand of a right. Allowed, it also says creation of an entitlement. You are to allowing me in this case. In this case, the word case is very, very important. So these were the arguments they talked about, which these must be considered. Now what the court has to say. Court undertook all the provisions, all the arguments, and they said, first of all, you cannot say goods and services are equal. You cannot say zero rated and IDS are equal. These are the different classes. Exporters and domestic suppliers are the different classes. These cannot be taken together. So as per this, no classification issues arises. As per in terms of Article 14, it seeks equality, no issues in that. Even if 54, they said, they then went to the point of, what was that point? The intent of the law. They said, please look into the intent of the law. If you talk about the intent of the law, sure, they particularly mention that if it is, what is the intent behind it? The intent is the government, the legislature does not want to give the refund, and as a result, the same should prevail. It cannot be restricted. Section 54, subsection 3 के जो proviso है, that is a restriction, that is not a condition. Government की मर्जी है, वो किसी चीज को goods treat करे, services treat करे, constitutional scheme के according ये valid है. Section 49 एक basket create करता है, उसके according ये valid है. No doctrine of equivalence should arise in this case. And furthermore, friends, उन्होंने एक anomaly present की थी. Just let me discuss that anomaly with you. And one thing more, the court also mentioned one thing, that there is no condition कि आप ये नहीं कह सकते 164 से जर्नल पावर ली है. एक्ट में कहीं भी पावर दी गई हो, that is admissible. Friends, प्रॉपर एग्जाम्पल इसमें दी गई है और एनोमली वही है जो हमने अपनी पहली एग्जाम्पल में रेफर की थी. दिस इज, अगर एक पर्सन ओनली एंड ओनली इनवर्टेड ड्यूटी स्ट्रक्चर की सेल करता है, उसको 3 लाख का उसका इनपुट है, 2.5 लाख उसको यूज हो जाता है और लेट्स सपोज 50,000 उसको रिफंड मिल जाता है और 1 लाख रुपया उसका इनपुट सर्विस का नीचे रह जाता है. सुनिए, उसका आउटपुट था 2.5 लाख, इनपुट था 3 लाख ऑफ ओनली इनपुट का आईटीसी. 3 लाख में से 2,50,000 उसने आउटपुट के लिए यूज कर लिया, 50,000 का रिफंड मिलता है और इनपुट सर्विस का आईटीसी 1 लाख एज इट इज रह जाता है. बट एक पर्सन जो इनवर्टेड ड्यूटी में प्लस अदर में डील करता है, ये फॉर्मूलाज के अकॉर्डिंग उसको रिफंड भी पूरा मिलता है और वो इनपुट सर्विसेज का आईटीसी यूज भी कर जाता है. एज अ रिजल्ट देयर इज अ डिस्पैरिटी बिटवीन द पीपल. द फॉर्मूला इज नॉट प्रॉपरली ड्राफ्टेड. द ऑनरेबल कोर्ट सेड, I don't have the power to go into the intricacies of the formula. They said these are the restrictions and not the conditions. As a result, the Madras High Court holds goods, no issues of classification, nothing else. And this is what was the judgment which was pronounced, but with a condition to the government कि आपके formula में जो anomaly है, जिसमें आपने गलत जो आपकी ये disparity आ रही है, that must be considered and the formula should suitably be revised. So this is a condition of eligibility. This is not a condition of eligibility. This is a substantive restriction. There is no disharmony. There is no classification issue. As a result, TVL, Translay, AFCON's joint venture holds good. So these were the various grounds. And with this, I end up my deliberation. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aanchal. You know, I have been on that side of the table more than often, so I realize what it takes to speak continuously for a span of an hour and a half without a break, and that too deliberating so beautifully. I see that so many of our participants, their videos were on. So they were so, I mean, engrossed in listening to you with great intent. And honestly, this subject is again very close to my heart because we've been dealing with a couple of clients in the inverted UP structure. So the way you beautifully shortened, you know, जिसको बोलते हैं प्रेसी में आपने उस judgment को समझाया. Thank you so much for that. That indeed was a eye opener for me as a professional. Well, Supreme Court has given their decision. There's not much we can do honestly, but as the Supreme Court itself has held that consistency and discipline are far greater importance than winning or losing of court proceedings. But what I as a professional, if I had to opine, what I liked about the judgment is that the Honorable Apex Court has, you know, very rightly supported the section 54.3 and disregarded the provisions of rule 89.5. I think that goes a long way in setting precedents for a judgment like this. But with these very few words, I would want to know if our President Vivek Agarwal would like to say a few words, and then I would do the honors of presenting the team. Aanchal.
Thanks a lot, Shivani ji. Thanks a lot to the speaker, Aanchal ji. I think ACA is really happy to have Aanchal ji over here and to discuss such a wonderful deliberation, or to say a summary of 140 pages, as she started saying, in just 1.5 hours. It was a great challenge, and then giving the background, not only discussing the judgment, but giving the background was great, and it was real learning for non-GST people like me. Thanks a lot. Looking forward for more such sessions from Aanchal ji. Over to Shivani ji for formal vote of thanks.
Yes, Vivek. Aanchal, I'm taking the great honor and privilege of sharing this e-memento. I hope it's visible to you.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And thank you so much.
So I would not say because of the pandemic, but you know, I think all of us have become so used to this virtual world. But whenever next we have you in person, we will want to give you a memento physically. Till then, please accept this as a mark of great respect and gratitude for gracing the platform at ACA, Aanchal. And from our side, best wishes. May our association always be as strong. And we are very looking forward to having you once again at this platform.
Thank you so much for your kind words, and it's all my pleasure to deliberate on this elite platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And
thank you to all the participants for the patient listening. I know listening from 4 to 7 is actually means something. So thank you so much for their patient listening.
Yes, and thank you so much everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much. Good night. I'll just end the meeting now, Aanchal.
Sorry?
I'm ending the meeting.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Right. Bye-bye.